Ah, I see you've brought guests.
Greetings.
Greetings, friend.
You know, take candle.
An empty pew for you and your guest.
I must consider. Not too quickly. By the light.
The +1.
Everyone sees things according to their level, and they operate according to their level, and they judge according to their level. And the truth is that most of us are largely unfamiliar with how things operate at other levels. So to a certain extent, I think it's unavoidable that we will see things incorrectly and we'll judge things incorrectly. So like if you look at Israel right now, if you look at the economy of Israel and the political and social situation in Israel right now, from the perspective of, say, a neoliberal predator, you know, from the perspective of an economic hitman, what's going to be look like a lion looking at a wounded animal that strayed from the herd. That's what Israel looks like to someone at that level. Now, you and I are understandably focused on Israel's ability to kill, but you're so focused on that, and maybe the Israelis themselves are so focused on that, that you'll fail to notice the extent to which Israel is losing the ability to live. They have the ability to kill, but they are rapidly losing their ability to live as a nation, as a country, as a so-called Jewish state. Netanyahu has sacrificed the long-term sustainability of Israel for the sake of his short-term political career. In order for him to even have a career in Israel at this point, he's put all his eggs in the basket of fanatical Zionist lunatics like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. And these are people who have a single political priority, which is to commit a Holocaust against the Palestinians. That's their only political priority. Well, you can't run an economy on that basis. The Holocaust of the Palestinians is not a project that sustains a state, but they don't care. Netanyahu doesn't care. Like I've said before, they all think, these Zionist types, they all think that the Israeli economy is always going to be propped up. It's always going to be propped up by American aid, because it always has been. All they were ever required to do was to bomb and to kill and to destabilize, and they were always amply rewarded for doing that. So they think that this contract that they have with America is an indefinite agreement. You know, so they've never had to truly build an independent economy. They've never had to build a truly independent state. Israel has been a client state from the beginning. It's been a dependency from the beginning. And they made the mistake of thinking that that model, that client state model, is permanent. I mean, the vulnerability of that sort of a state is obvious. It's obvious. But the assumption of permanence made them think that that vulnerability didn't matter. But that's never been realistic. That's never been a realistic assessment. You cannot build your state, you cannot build your economy based on the assumption that the world is never going to change and the geopolitics and relationships are never going to change. You can be a thriving dependency only as long as you are useful to your benefactor. But the moment you cease being useful to your benefactor, then your dependency upon that benefactor becomes a liability to that benefactor. You can make hay while the sun shines, but you can't pretend that the sun isn't going to set at some point. And the sun is setting for Israel. Committing the genocide in Gaza has completely blown a gaping hole in the Israeli economy. Their debt is climbing. It's climbing towards levels that they cannot comfortably sustain. They can't comfortably service. As I said before, their credit ratings are falling. They were downgraded, which means that they'll have to pay more for any money that they borrow from here on out. That's when a country starts to become willing to accept terms that they would have never accepted before. They're under extreme structural fiscal stress, Israel is. Israel's 2025 deficit guidance sits at around 4.9% of GDP. And that could blow all the way past 6% or 7% if things continue to grind on as they have been, and as Netanyahu has said he plans to do. You understand? Their debt is projected to be 70 to 71% of their GDP in 2025, 2026. That's from the Bank of Israel. You have severe labor shortages in Israel because of their calling up their reservists, their mobilization of reservists, plus the loss of Palestinian workers. That's choked off construction. That's choked off services in Israel. Even with imported workers from, India and elsewhere, Philippines, Bangladesh, and so on, you're still something like 100,000 workers short. That's just for the construction sector. About 10 to 15% of the Israeli workforce has either been called up as reservists, or they're otherwise non-productive because of, mental illness, because of PTSD, suicidality, and what have you. Not to mention how many of them have been killed, how many Israelis have been killed, and how many have fled the country. Okay, so that's the situation. Now, when you and I look at that, the only thing that we see is the damage. That's what we see. But an economic hitman, a predatory investor, they see opportunity. Opportunity for control, opportunity for leverage. See, this is the hard thing for most of us to wrap our heads around. That's what I was talking about how we look from different strata. So resistance and opposition looks one way on one strata, and it looks a whole other kind of way on another strata. You understand? It depends on what level you're at. It depends on your level, and it depends on your resources. So for us, for most of us, at our level, from our strata, our opposition and our resistance looks like protests. It looks like boycotts. It looks like, death to the IDF and so on. But on a higher strata, on a higher level, with greater resources and so forth, resistance and opposition operates entirely differently. It can even look like the opposite of resistance for those of us who are on a lower level, you see. So for us, we boycott, for instance. We don't buy. But when you're in the strata of an economic hitman, when you're in the strata of a predatory investor, you don't boycott. You do buy. You buy. You supply. Because at the level where you are, you can purchase dependence. You can buy disempowerment. Do you understand? So say, for example, you become the manpower supplier for the Israeli labor market that is short of labor, especially for construction. So you become, or you say you buy, or you establish 2 or 3 or 4 different firms, manpower firms, that provide labor imported or exported manpower from another country, migrant labor.
Don't keep your
You sign
thoughts to yourself.
MOUs with Indian and Filipino recruiters, and now you control 25 to 30% or 40% of the migrant labor pipeline going into Israel. That's control. That's a dependency. You identify a weakness, you identify a vulnerability, and then you become the solution for that vulnerability. But that means that you never let them solve their weakness. You never let them solve their vulnerability by becoming stronger independently, by becoming invulnerable. No. You keep them weak, you keep them vulnerable, precisely by being the solution to that weakness and to that vulnerability. Do you understand me? So they never have to fix it. They never have to fix it themselves. They become dependent upon you as the solution, as the fix for their weakness and vulnerability. That's power, that's control, that's leverage. That's resistance and opposition as it operates on that level, as it operates on that strata. Now, to us down here at our level, well, we'll say it looks like collusion, it looks like collaboration, it looks like support. Why would you be supplying workers to Israel? Right? That's from our perspective. We want them to be without workers. We want everything to stop in that country. We want all of their industries to shut down, okay? That's myopic. Because the problem is going to be solved one way or the other. Their shortages problem, their economic problems and so on, it's going to be solved one way or the other. Because that's what countries have to do. It's either going to be solved by themselves, either they're going to solve it themselves, meaning they're going to fix their vulnerability, or else someone is going to come in to become the solution that keeps them vulnerable and keeps them dependent. Now you tell me which one is better. Would you rather them become invulnerable or remain vulnerable by having someone else solve their problem for them and make them dependent upon the problem solver? So like, for example, if I was a GCC investor, for example, that's what I would do. I would become the labor supplier for Israel. I would make deals with recruiters and with Israeli companies with a clause that says that we have to be the exclusive provider of labor for this or that company or for this or that project. I would tell the Israelis, okay, look, I understand you need workers. You need workers badly. Your reservists are all called up. You've locked the Palestinians out of your labor sector. Now construction is bleeding. Housing costs are exploding. Okay, no problem. We'll solve it for you. We'll set up a fund. We'll call it, say, the Workforce Stability Fund or Workforce Stability Initiative. We'll front the cash to bring in tens of thousands of workers. We'll pay for that. We'll pay for their flights. We'll pay for their housing. We'll pay for their training. All you have to do is guarantee our investment. You can do that through your pension funds. Your pension funds can guarantee our investment. So every month, a cut of the workers' paychecks will go right back into the fund, back to us, to the UAE, or to the GCC, or what have you. That'll be automatic. Okay, that's Israeli money being siphoned off to go to GCC financial institutions. Money taken from them and given to us. And if too many workers quit, well, repayment comes out of your pension funds, not out of their paychecks. Then suddenly, mysteriously, you start having reports of labor abuses in Israel, human rights violations against construction workers, and so on. You know, your government's not protecting laborers. It's a shame. Then we have to shut down the worker pipeline. But you still have to pay us from your pension fund. No more visas, no more flights, no more nothing. Suddenly, half of your construction sites all go silent. They all go quiet. They all become still. And you have a liquidity crisis because you have to pay us. And the same goes with energy. You know, everyone's talking about this $35 billion natural gas deal between Israel and Egypt, the Leviathan field and so on. First of all, like I said before, this is a pre-existing trade relationship. They were already buying gas from Israel. It's been going on for years already. That's treachery, right? They're supposed to be boycotting. Egypt is supposed to be boycotting. I mean, after all, energy is one of the few sectors left in Israel that can still bring in some money. So shame on Egypt, right? Again, that's the view from our strata of resistance, from our level of resistance. But look at this. This is what I think is a 15, 20-year contract, locked in, okay? Now, this deal was always based on the idea that Egypt's rising consumption needs, their energy consumption needs, needed this from Israel, this gas from Israel. They needed it for domestic use. That's always been the understanding. I think currently Israel supplies 15 to 20% of Egypt's gas consumption. Egypt is Israel's biggest export customer for natural gas. Okay, but this is a mutual dependency, you understand? Egypt needs the gas, yes, but Israel needs to sell the gas. So Israel is economically dependent on Egypt. They're dependent on Egypt as a stable and a large customer. Okay, so what happens when Egyptian need has alternatives? Because Egypt is actively pursuing alternatives right now. And there's no doubt that in the long term, that's exactly what will happen. They will have alternatives. They will have other means of meeting domestic consumption. If they begin to increase their own domestic gas production, which they can do, or they secure alternative natural gas supplies from, say, Russia or from Qatar or from Turkey or what have you, this is going to allow Egypt to buy Israeli gas primarily for their own LNG export, meaning Egypt will be the one profiting from Israeli gas. Not to mention this is going to make Egypt a strategic choke point for Israeli energy exports to the global market, because Israeli gas destined for export would be routed through Egyptian infrastructure, Egyptian pipelines, LNG terminals, and so forth. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you follow me? It ties it completely with Egypt's domestic policies and their infrastructure capabilities. But there's more. The Israeli company that is involved in this deal with Egypt is called NewMed, and the United Arab Emirates is already in negotiations to buy half the shares in that company. They're going to build a pipeline to ship the gas to Egypt. And that's going to cost more than Israel can possibly finance, especially after the last 2 years. So again, this is an opportunity for leverage. It's an opportunity for control, because a pipeline is a choke point. Infrastructure is a choke point. Egypt is becoming a choke point. We've learned from our own experience in oil and gas and so forth that the resource itself is not, in fact, the main lever of control. It's the extraction, it's the processing, it's the refinement, it's the shipment of that resource. Those are the levers of control. That's how the West has subjugated us. Despite the fact that our resource wealth vastly surpasses the West, but they've been able to control us by controlling all of these other means. They've controlled the means of extraction, the means of processing, the means of export, and so forth. And now that's what is being set up regionally to subordinate Israel. But it doesn't look like that to us from our strata. But this plays out the same across multiple sectors: logistics, ports, storage, trucking, healthcare, construction, like I said, desalination, sanitation, on and on and on. Every single one of these sectors in Israel are vulnerable now. And the longer Netanyahu runs that country, the more he is running that country into the ground, driving the economy off a cliff. Every single sector in Israel, every single industrial and economic sector in Israel is going to be ripe for economic conquest. Conquest by the GCC and conquest by BRICS, by China. But from our strata, we see this conquest as Israel being propped up, because that's how it looks like from our position, from our level. But it's not being propped up, it's being locked up. But most of us don't understand economics. Most of us don't understand investing. We don't understand business. And to be honest, most of us have a very simplistic vision of what Israel's defeat is supposed to look like. We want to see Israelis all scrambling on the beach, for dinghies and rafts and whatnot in the Mediterranean Sea, trying to escape to Cyprus, trying to, row their way to Greece or Cyprus while Tel Aviv burns. Because we don't understand how conquest actually works in the 21st century. We don't understand how things work on that strata of wealth and power, of economic hitmen and predatory investors. But okay, that is what's happening at that strata. That's what they're doing. And they know what they're doing. And it's positive for Palestine. And it's positive for regional sovereignty and regional independence, political independence, and economic sovereignty. And it's positive for the evaporation of Zionism. So what about your strata? That's what you really need to worry about. That's what you really should be thinking about and worrying about. What are we doing at our level? Everyone's always talking about what they think that the people at higher levels of power and authority and influence, we always talk about what we think they should be doing, or what they should be doing more, what they're not doing, and so forth. Always critical of this, how they're not doing enough, and so forth. But okay, but what about you? How about you? Because you're not going to be asked about anyone else. You're only accountable for what you're doing, for what you have done. And I can tell you, the Muslims at the higher levels of authority, the Muslims at the higher level of power and wealth, they're doing more than you, without question. You think that they're doing less than you, but they are doing vastly more than you. That's a fact. And it's not just because they're capable of doing more than you because of their wealth and power. No, they are doing more, they are risking more, they are coordinating more, they are organizing more with what they have in terms of assets and options than what people at our strata, at our lower strata, arguably, what we are doing relative to our assets and options. That's a fact. I mean, what has activism meant so far, particularly in the West? What does activism look like these days? It's hashtags, tweets, raising awareness, online activism, street protests, boycotts, and so forth. Now, I'm not belittling any of these things. These are all important things, no doubt. But do you imagine that this is the utmost? I mean, look, the reality is that you are only limited in your options for activism by your own conviction and by your own commitment and by your own willingness to face consequences. These are the only barriers to doing more than what you are doing, to doing more than what you have done. And as I said before, if you are in the West, especially if you're in America, no one should be doing more than you. No one is more responsible than you. No one is more accountable than you. Because this is an American genocide. It is a Western genocide. Israel is an American colonial project that you are paying for. So like I say, boycotts. Okay, you personally decide that you're not going to patronize this or that store, this or that cafe, this or that company, right? You're not going to buy their products. You're not going to buy their goods and services and so forth. Maybe you even learn the barcode and whatnot, so that you can identify when a product comes from Israel and so forth. Maybe you take the BDS list anytime you go to the mall or anytime you go to the grocery store or what have you, so that you can be a conscientious consumer about your purchases. Okay, great. But I mean, you would essentially be doing the same thing if you were just health conscious and on a tight budget. That's not activism. Not really. Let's be honest. That's just doing the minimum of what your conscience demands you to do. That's not activism. That's basic. That's making basic moral decisions with your money. Activism means being active. That's the whole point. Like, instead of just not giving a company your money, activism would mean that we're talking about actively preventing that company from profiting at all. Okay, yes, to a certain extent you're doing that by spreading awareness about a company's involvement or connection to Israel. You spread awareness about that so that other people can also choose to be moral consumers, to make moral decisions with their money, sure. But I'm talking about boycott enforcement. Not just, I'm not going to shop here. No, you take it to the point of no one is going to shop here. This company, this shop, this outlet is not going to be allowed to profit. It's not going to be allowed to operate. It's not going to be allowed to function. I'm talking about system disruption. Because anyone who can disrupt a system controls that system. I thought that leftists, for example, were all pro-Palestinian. And I also thought that leftists were all connected to or embedded in labor unions. Well, how can both of these be true if we have not had universal labor union shutdowns in relation to Israeli-linked companies? I mean, in a few places, mostly in Europe, as far as I know, we have had, like, for example, dock workers refusing to load or unload ships that are carrying goods or carrying weapons that are bound to or coming from Israel. That's happened. But why are these things sporadic occurrences? Why does it only happen once in a while? We only hear about it once in a while. Why isn't there a unified position across all unions? Now, let me quickly address this fake news that was going around, by the way, about the Saudi ship that was allegedly carrying weapons bound for Israel. They got targeted by dock workers in Italy and Genoa. Okay, that ship was never going to Israel. It was going to the Emirates and it was going to Egypt. Even in the articles about that incident, can't substantiate anything about that ship delivering anything to Israel. But either way, these are sporadic occurrences. Why are they sporadic? You're supposed to be working with the unions. You're supposed to be helping to organize with the unions. And even when there are no unions to work with, you're supposed to be doing that. Look, you can't enforce boycotts. You know, those products on the shelf that you're not going to buy because they're on the BDS list, those products that you're boycotting, well, they had to be put on the shelves in the first place. Think it through. They had to be offloaded from some container ship. They had to be transported. They had to be stored in a warehouse somewhere. And then they had to be delivered from that warehouse to the outlet, to the store, where the shelves are. At every point in that process, there are opportunities for disruptive activism. Again, especially if you have unions involved, or just even non-unionized workers involved. But even if you don't, it just depends on your commitment. Like I say, it depends on your commitment, it depends on your imagination. And like I said, it depends on your willingness to face the consequences. Okay? You've got the whole supply chain that you can work with. You've got the whole domestic supply chain in your country, in your state, that you can map, and you can identify points where you have the potential to disrupt. That goes for any company. It doesn't matter. Any company. Because every company is a system. It's a system. It depends on the smooth running of that system in order to profit. So you've got the supply chain that you can work on. Then you've got the physical location of the vendor. Even the physical location of any vendor, of any company, of any store, what have you, they rely on a system in order for them to succeed. And you have to learn how to break this down. I mean, how to understand and dissect this, how to understand and dissect the system that that store relies upon. So like say a store or a coffee shop or what have you, look at that location, look at the actual location, look at what that location needs in order to make customers even want to go there. It has to be clean, it has to have, you know, furniture, tables and chairs, for example. It has to have air conditioning, most likely. It has to have lights, it has to have plumbing, it should smell nice. It should generally be quiet, it should be comfortable, it should be relaxing, and so on. Okay, every aspect of that is disruptible, legally. I'm not saying that you should do anything against law. I'm saying that there is plenty that you can do if you use your imagination, if you use your creativity. You can interfere with the smooth operations of any business. Any business that's supposed to be boycotted, you can enforce that boycott by means of disruption. And again, obviously, if workers are themselves recruited, who work for those companies, work for those shops, and so on, you recruit them into your efforts, obviously it's going to be much more effective. As I've mentioned many, many times, just look back at the tactics of the early labor movement in the United States or even in Europe. Because the truth is that every system of power is dependent upon a whole sort of web work of connections. And this web is actually quite delicate and quite vulnerable. Look, honestly speaking, in the West, and especially in America, this is the fact. You all are going to have to start learning much more forceful, much more militant, and more strategic and more creative tactics of activism. I mean just overall. I'm not just talking about Palestine, but generally speaking, you're going to have to learn these sorts of strategies, these sorts of tactics, because your situation is going to start to get very intense very soon. And the authorities are counting on you never really being able to respond except through, you know, online whinging, hashtags and what have you on the one hand, or sporadic acts of violence and chaos on the other hand, riots and looting and so forth. Neither of these approaches is going to help you. Notice I said militant and forceful. I did not say violent. You have to learn tactics of system disruption. That's different from violence, because it's generally not going to be in your interests to actually use violence. Any violence from your side is just going to feed into the already existing momentum of militarized domestic security. Disruption gives you leverage. Destruction does not give you leverage. Remember that. Now you have to learn how to tactically exploit the weak points in any system so that you can cause cascading failure while staying within the law. I'm saying that activism in the West, in America, is going to finally have to become something much more than recreational, which is what it is now, let's be honest. It's going to have to become more than expressive. It has to be more than just something that you do to make yourself feel better. Understand that you are facing a major challenge in the West, in America, and take that seriously, actually seriously. You have to think like an engineer of political and economic pressure. That's how you have to think of yourself. That means that you have to study the mechanics of the system that dominates you. Not in vague terms. You have to study that down to the smallest operational dependencies and learn how to target those dependencies. I mean, if you have not mapped the systems that you're up against, then there's no point in trying to decide on any sort of action. There's no point in trying to mobilize for any sort of action. That's what everyone does in the West, in America. You just select from the existing menu of standard activist options, like I said, protest, boycott, letters to politicians, hashtags, and so forth. No, there's no way for you to decide what sort of an action you're going to take until you have fully examined the system that is involved in the injustice that you're trying to fight. You have to understand the system. The authorities have a fortress mindset. So they're going to assume that you're going to attack the walls of the fortress head on, and they're prepared for that. They expect you either to be compliant and obedient or to be noisy and predictable in your defiance. You should be neither one. You have to learn how their logistics work. You have to identify the choke points in their supply, in their communication, in their coordination. You have to find the what you can call the procedural bottlenecks. You know, the fragile chains of reliance where the whole system depends on. See, this is basically the same approach that's being taken at the higher strata of resistance and opposition, as I talked about earlier. It's basically the same approach. You know, most activists are too emotional, but they need to be calculated. I mean, you talk about resistance, but you don't treat yourself like a resistance movement. You don't act like a resistance movement. A resistance movement understands the risk, understands the threat if they fail. They understand that the stakes are high, and they focus on substantive actions, not symbolic actions. I mean, the point is not to show the power structure we disapprove. No. The point is to stop the power structure from even being able to do what you disapprove of. They don't care what you approve or disapprove. They don't care about your opinion. They only care about what you have the power to stop, what you have the ability to stop. You know, you always talk about what they say, speaking truth to power, as if power doesn't already know the truth. They know. They know what they're doing. And if all you're going to do is tell them what they're doing, then all they're hearing from that, the only thing they get from that message is what you are not doing or what you are afraid to do. And as soon as they know what you're afraid to do, they will just make sure that the ability to stop them lies beyond that threshold of what you're afraid to do. So that's the space that you need to live in. You understand? Because this goes both ways. We already know what their threshold is. They have a threshold too, and we know what it is. Their threshold is unprofitability. So you have to force them into that space. That's the space that they don't want to go to. Yes, you have to be forceful. Forcefulness in this context does not mean violence. It means that you apply pressure that they cannot absorb without making concessions. You know, militancy means that you operate with discipline, with precision, and with unity. It doesn't mean that you operate with rage and upon impulse. Creativity means that you never settle down on one strategy so that they can develop a counter strategy because you keep changing your angles. That's creativity. And like I say, you remain within the law because staying within the bounds of the law forces them to reveal themselves whenever they retaliate against you. You keep the high ground and you keep your movement intact. Your aim is to make the system malfunction in ways that they cannot openly acknowledge without exposing the fragility of that system. And like I said before, you actually need to be using the law in your resistance, not abusing the law, using the law, not violating the law. You need to be invoking the law. Lawsuits are going to be critical for you moving forward, whether it's for the Palestinian cause or for anything else. And yes, all of this, everything that I'm talking about, all of this requires serious, on-the-ground, grassroots community building. That's something that you need to take very seriously. Community organizing, getting off the internet and getting into the streets, getting off your phones and getting into each other's homes, face to face, not FaceTime. You can actually dissect everything that has been done to you through social engineering. Everything that has been done to you to render you impotent and docile, and then reverse engineer it. You understand me? Become exactly that version of yourselves that the power structure has always worked diligently to invert. You understand? They made you impatient, so become patient. They made you impulsive, so become disciplined. They made you frivolous, so become serious. They made you lazy, so become energetic. They made you distracted, so become focused. Become the opposite of what they have always tried to make you. They made you addicted to entertainment, so disconnect. Read, study, research, learn. You understand? They've given you millions of ways to waste your time. They've given you millions of ways to waste your time because they're scared to death of you using your time seriously. They want you to only ever be productive when you're on their clock. You know, when you're punched in on your shift, to make money for them. That's the only time they want you to be productive. But your free time is supposed to be wasted. And they've given you countless ways to do it. They've given you countless ways to waste your time. So you need to reject all of this. You need to reject all of this as the poison that it is. You understand? I'm telling you that you have a lot of work to do in the West and on people on our level. And we have a lot more that we're going to need to do. The Muslim world and the global South, they're doing the work already. They're doing the work that needs to be done at every stratum, at every level. You don't need to worry about that. Don't worry about what the Muslim world is doing or what the global South is doing. They're working on diversification economically, de-dollarization, multipolarity, strategic investing, sovereignty building, on and on and on. They're working on coordination, on diplomacy, on acquiring leverage, etc., etc. We're busy on our end, doing the needful. By comparison, the people in the West are sleepwalking. They're sleepwalking and calling it a victory march. No, you need to step up your game, not just for Palestine, but for your own selves. I told you before, we're on our way out. In the global South, we're on our way out of colonial tyranny. But you're on your way in. You're heading into the same kind of oppression that we're just now getting ourselves out of. Because the colonizers are coming home. Colonization is coming home. And you're even less equipped, and you're even less capable, and you're even less prepared for what is coming to you than we were when the colonizers first invaded our lands. So you have a lot of catching up to do. You have a lot of getting yourselves up to speed to do. And you have a lot of building work ahead of you. Building yourselves as individuals, building yourselves as communities, and building yourselves as a resistance movement. And while you waste your time, your enemy uses their time. In fact, your wasted time is in fact them using their time, because getting you to waste your time is already a victory for them. All the time that you waste is their time well spent. Understand, they take you more seriously than you take yourselves. It's true. That's why they work so hard to neutralize you. That's why they work so hard to infantilize you, to desensitize you, and to traumatize you. They work so hard to preemptively tear down the person that you might someday build yourself to be. So you need to stop lecturing the Muslim world, wallahi. Stop trying to lecture the Muslim world and the global South, and start learning from the Muslim world and the global South. Because like I said before, we've been through what you're just about to go through. You don't know anything about what we've survived and what we are surviving, but we know everything about what you're about to suffer. So it would be much wiser for you to connect rather than to condemn the Muslim world. Don't lob attacks at us, but attach yourselves to us and gain, or try to gain, some of the skills and some of the knowledge that our struggle has taught us, so that you can possibly navigate what your society is going to become and is becoming. We know what we're doing in the global South, in the Muslim world. Having you criticize us and criticize our leaders, wallahi, it's like watching an abused wife posting happy couple pictures on Instagram. You know, pretending to be a relationship coach while she's got a black eye. Believe me, none of us has got time for that nonsense. We don't have time for this nonsense. No one listens to that nonsense. And you don't have time to waste being nonsensical. You need to be more serious. This is not a drill. The fight against injustice is not a school competition where you get a participation trophy just for showing up and shouting a slogan, or for foregoing a frappuccino. It's called a fight because it is a fight. That's what it is. It's a fight. And you can't phone in your resistance. Resistance means doing things that you don't like to do. It means doing things that you're afraid to do. Things that are uncomfortable. Things that require time, money, persistence, resilience, diligence, and vigilance. It requires discipline and discomfort. In other words, it requires all of the qualities and all of the traits that the system has tried to completely erase from your personality as an American, as a Westerner. Like I said, look at the kind of person that they have tried to make you, that your society has tried to make you, what they've tried to make everyone, and understand that all they were ever doing was trying to program you to be a slave. That's the personality type that they've been trying to create. And so then you have to know that the opposite qualities and the opposite characteristics are exactly the kinds of things that you need to be cultivating in order to make yourself actually formidable. So let everyone work where they are. You work there and we'll work here. And let everyone work at their level, whatever level they're on, knowing that we are all working in the same direction and we are all working against the same enemy.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. We need to finish this project. Simam Sarat wa Khamis. Alhamdulillah, I'm here at Masjid Isa ibn Maryam. This is the go-to masjid in New York City. We desperately need to finish this project this year. We need this for everybody. We need this masjid for everybody. Those who've been around a long time, but especially for the youth. Alhamdulillah, donate whatever you can. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you.
Thoughts to yourself. The future is clear. Your demise be near. Come on, share.
Remain seated. Remain seated.
I don't want you to crush your enemy totally. I want you to be aware that that happens in business all the time.
I have wanted to interview this man for years. He is one of my favorite authors of all time. He wrote 48 Laws of Power.
At this very moment, there are vultures circling around who are going to buy your business out and crush you. It's a merciless environment. And what that signals is you're weak, we can play you, and the next time around, we're going to negotiate the hell out of you. I don't want you to be like that. I want you to be open.
What do you think is the most underrated human truth that a young person should know who wants control or power?
The most important skill that you can have is...
Wow. Is there something that you do when you are feeling absolutely no way you can write?
Well, you know, it's almost a question that makes me want to cry. I'm so sorry.
This is the Big Deal Podcast, and I'm Cody Sanchez. I am so excited, you guys. I have wanted to interview this man for years. He is one of my favorite authors of all time. I even embarrassingly told him that today. And if you, like me, want to understand power, you want to understand how do you seduce someone, you want to understand how do I get my way, you want to understand why is it that this person isn't doing what I want them to do, are these people actually out to get me, what is the truth of the situation that no one will tell me? Robert Greene, I think, is one of the few people in the world that will tell you the truth. He wrote the very famous book, 48 Laws of Power, which he gave me a copy of right here. He's actually written 7 books that have sold millions of copies, all about this idea, overarching, of how do we communicate and how does power exist. We talk about human nature through the decades and centuries, the things that are true consistently, what to do in order to not be anti-seductive, and what a young person should know that no one else will tell you. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Robert Greene as much as I did. I hope you tell me in the comments how I did, because I was very nervous and I didn't sleep last night thinking about this interview. And hopefully you give it a ton of views, likes, shares, and you subscribe so that I can have him back, because I have about 452 other questions for him. So if you have questions for Robert too, put them down below. I promise you, next time we'll go even deeper. Without further ado, the one, the only, Robert Greene. Do you think best when you write, or when you speak, or when you read?
This game, you're not ready for it.
high environment.
Remain seated.
And you're seeing intrigue, the
Wow. I mean, when I'm reading, I'm doing a lot of thinking, and I have a very active way of reading. I take notes and I write in the book, in the margins of the book. And if I don't like a book, which happens every now and then, I'm like crossing everything out and I'm writing FU on the margin and stuff. No. I argue and I talk with the book as I write it. But, when I'm talking, sometimes I don't feel like I'm bringing my ideas as clearly as I'd like to. So I really think best in the form of writing. But I've always handwritten my first drafts. Now I can only handwrite because I can't type. I used to be a very fast typist. Now I can't because of my stroke. So I handwrite. And there's something about, because, you're younger, people who are younger, they don't even know what handwriting is anymore.
Yep.
It's like something that, from thousands of years ago, as far as they're concerned. But when you handwrite, it's a different feeling than when you type. There's more of a direct connection between the hand and the brain than the computer. So I feel like when I'm writing, I'm kind of scratching on the page something that's in my ear that I'm hearing. It's getting a little bit hard to describe right now, but I'm actually going through that as I'm writing this chapter at home, which I'll be returning to when I leave here.
I love that. I feel similarly. I think best when writing. And that ability to, it's almost like an emotional transfer via the pen is hard. You could type hard on the keyboard, but you can't get outside of the lines, right? There's some sort of structural process to it that you're bound by within the computer.
Yeah.
Whereas with a pen, this is your sword. You get to do with it as you will. You can't really constrain you.
Yeah.
And I always liked that same thing. It's funny because the last time I reread your very first book, 48 Laws of Power, it was on the computer, or I guess on the iPad, and so I forgot about the
I don't know
the
if the iPad or the ebook. I don't think they do include the.
They
couldn't.
Yeah.
So.
But this is so magical. It's actually astounding more people don't copy you in this age of everybody copying everything. With this really signature margin you have, that it does almost feel like I'm talking somehow to you, and this is your personal book.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that idea?
Well, it's 26 years ago, or well, more than that, 28 years ago when I started writing it.
Wild.
So it's, but it kind of came together in this organic way. I remember I'm Jewish, and I was bar mitzvahed when I was 13 years old. And before that, you have to go to Hebrew school. You have to read the Torah in Hebrew, so I learned Hebrew. And when you read the Torah, there's the Torah, the passage from the Bible, and on the margins are commentaries of the passage written by authorities from thousands of years ago. That idea must have sunk in my head as kind of, authorities on the margins kind of commenting on the material. And I've read other books that have done that. It's very rare. But somehow I felt like there were these amazing fables and stories that I had researched, but I can't incorporate them in what I'm writing. I want to have several voices going on at the same time. So each of the material on the margins, which are quotes from books, they're fables, they're from all different sources. They're like a conversation that is happening with what I'm writing. I'm like commenting on it through them. So there'll be a famous fable from the ancient Greek writer Aesop's fables that explains in a kind of very elemental, almost childlike way, a story about power, and it relates directly to what I've written there. I just find that a very powerful form of writing, right?
Yeah, and it sticks with you.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, there was one of them. You just handed me this beautiful version of the book in its 25th anniversary edition. Is that what this is?
It is. Well, it was 2023 was the 25th anniversary. We're in 2025. It came out a year and a half ago.
We are getting old. And there's this one. I was going to start somewhere else, but I want to start here.
Yeah.
A story about Kissinger, that
Yeah.
involved a report that Winston Lord had worked on for days. And after giving it to Kissinger, he got it back with the notation, "Is this the best you can do?"
Right.
Lord rewrote and polished and finally resubmitted and came back with the same curt question. And after drafting it one more time, once again getting the same question from Kissinger, the Lord
Greetings.
snapped, "Damn it, yes, it's the best I can do." To which Kissinger replied, "Fine."
Take this time to
Well
consider
played.
your past deeds.
Let's show these fine folks some Badlands hospitality.
99 ديما في الزونة تلقاني وحنا
Then I guess I'll read it this time.
Yeah.
What are you imparting with that story?
Well, sometimes the best kind of communication isn't necessarily direct. So if I tell you exactly what I want, Cody, in some report or anything, you might get a little bit rebellious. You might go, I thought I'd written it perfectly, you know. If I tell you exactly what to do, you're going to be just mimicking me or something. But if you signal to somebody else that what they wrote may not be quite right, it makes them think, right? Instead of I just criticize directly and they get all emotional and upset, and you say something directly about what you didn't like, if you just say, "Is that the best you can do?" it makes the other person go, "No, maybe I can make it better," right? It's a form of communication that's very powerful. And I'm very interested in that because we're people who are too verbal. We tell people exactly what we think, exactly what we want. We give instructions to people. But if you can be clever and you can kind of indicate and you can kind of send them in a certain direction, it's a much more powerful form of communication. Kissinger was kind of a master of that.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. You know, I was pushed out of 2 companies before, and
No.
both times it's because I violated rule number 1.
Oh, but well, I believe me, I violated it several times before I wrote the book.
Interesting. So the first
So
rule.
what happened? Tell me what happened.
Well, the first rule is never outshine
Yes.
the master, right? And both times I, almost like a small child with a painting that you hand drew to give to the parent, I kind of won an award, grew a business line for another business, and brought it like this little excitable child to the larger partner at both firms that I was working at
What
the time.
kind of firms are these?
Finance firms, private equity, and basically thought that this was me showing what I'd learned and how smart I was to this person.
Yeah.
And isn't this great? And look at what we're doing. And quickly realized, oh, they wanted to be on the cover and not me. And me taking that, I should have instead brought it to them and said, you should be on here, as
Yeah.
opposed to taking it for myself.
Yeah.
And so it took me literally 2 go-rounds until I finally realized
Well, what
my
happened? Did they
mistake.
fire you? Or?
Well, no, both times it was more subversive. To your point, it was, little workarounds and, let's put resources to this company and not Cody's segment of the
I see.
company.
Yeah, exactly.
Non-direct communication.
Yeah.
And I didn't know to play the game. I was
Yeah.
so linear and so direct and
Yeah.
missed so many EQ signs.
Well, that's why I wrote the book. I wasn't somebody who had a lot of power when I wrote the book. In fact, I was somebody who didn't have any power. I had many different jobs. I worked in Hollywood. Wasn't very successful. But what happens with a lot of people like myself is you enter the work world naive. Nobody tells you anything about these are the rules. This is how people can be so tricky and political. They have these egos that if you say the wrong thing or you step on their foot in some way, you're going to pay a price. Your parents don't tell you these stories. College professors, for God's sake, don't tell you these stories. The people, your bosses never want to talk about this. Nobody wants to talk about it. So sweet little innocent Cody enters the work world, or Robert, and you're just being yourself. You're just saying, I'm going to impress them. Aren't just doing a good job? Isn't that what matters? No, ego, politics, playing to making other people look good. That is 90% of the game, especially when you're starting out. Nobody talks about it. It's like a dirty little secret. Well, it's not a secret. It's really how the world works. That's what I wanted to reveal in there. So I've violated law number 1 because naturally, like you, I had a job on a television show I was a researcher, and you were judged by how many stories you ended up having produced through your research. I was by far the best one. I had like well over 30, where the next person had like 10 or so, right? And I thought I was just doing fantastic. And then I was fired. And I was fired because in a meeting, that person above me was thinking, Robert has an attitude. He's not listening. He's not being respectful. So she started laying into me again and again and again until she finally fired me. I didn't understand that it wasn't about researching hard and coming up with the best material. It was about playing the game the way she was, making her look better and not me look better. I learned the hard way. And so I want other people to understand it's okay to have ideals. I don't want to make you all cynical, but you have to be realistic. You have to understand that the people you work for have an ego. And you have to feed their ego and not violate it and not make them feel insecure.
It's so true, and I think it's hard for people to take that in because, like you said, it's almost like you're violating rule number 1 to the masses by exposing the fact that we don't talk about this, and yet it's true.
Yeah.
And so I know you got a ton of pushback when you came out with this first book. I also saw it. I was going back through old articles with seduction, too. The same thing. You kind of said the quiet part out loud. And I was wondering, when you're young, what percentage of people do you think actually realize that there is this undercurrent of how reality works that is true? Like, is this something normal for people to understand now, 25 years later, after you wrote this book? Or do people still not understand that being direct isn't always going to get you what you want?
It's, if I had to put a percentage on it, and I've thought about this, and it's not scientific by no means, I think about 5% of people actually understand these laws intuitively. And I can't explain why. I don't think it's genetic. It's just there's something to it where they understand, for instance, always say less than necessary, law number 4. They understand that if they talk less, they're not going to say something stupid. And people are going to look at them as if, they have an aura of mystery and they're powerful. They know that. They don't need to read Robert's book. They understand it's in their DNA. And they're people who generally, get very far in life. Okay? And they can often be a little bit more amoral and unethical, than the rest of us. But the majority, the 95% of us, we don't know these things, right? Because some of them seem counterintuitive. One law that people have actually criticized me a lot for, I think it's number 10, is infection. Avoid the unlucky and the unfortunate. And they assume that I'm saying just avoid people who've had bad luck or who are victims. And that's not at all what I wrote, and you have to read the chapter to understand. But the idea is, sometimes people enter your life and they're all dramatic. They're very charismatic and they have all these stories to tell. And usually the stories are about how somebody did something terrible to them. They're the victim, right? There's all this drama surrounding their lives. And it seems kind of interesting, and you become their friend, right? And slowly, you get embroiled in all of their drama. They have arguments with you, they turn against you, then they reconcile. And you find yourself getting infected with their ugly energy, and down and down and down you go. It's counterintuitive to think that somebody who's super dramatic is actually masking, they're creating the drama that is surrounding them. We don't think that way, and I'm trying to show that you have to be a little bit wary about people. You can't just take them at face value.
Well, you're
shaking your head like you've had that experience.
Oh, yeah. For sure. I mean,
okay.
Not only have I had the experience, there's a lot of data that supports it, right? There's data now that shows, I saw a study done on 1,000 companies where if you sit within a 25 square foot radius of somebody who's considered a high performer, you're 15% more likely to outperform. And if you sit next to a low performer, you are 30% more likely to underperform.
Yeah.
And so, there's actually even just a more aggressive downside to those who are negative or infectious in that way.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when you start researching this, where do you think Where is the data the most important, and where is history most important? Because in all of your works, it seems like there's an interweaving of the two. You know, there's a throwback to Churchill and a story about World War II, and then there's also the scientific data that we cover about findings and studies that show
Right.
The reality.
Well, back when I wrote the 48 Laws of Power, there wasn't really the internet. And the studies about power, if you can do studies about power and have data, there weren't very many of them, right? So I had to go through a pretty intensive research process, hundreds of books, reading all about the most famous people, you know, like a Kissinger. And that was my form of data. So when I read all these stories of very powerful people, kings, queens, courtesans, financiers, you know, the whole slew of them, I'd see trends, and that trend would signal to me a reality about human nature. So the two are interwoven. My research and my going through history was the evidence, was the scientific material that I based it on, as well as my own experience. So I've said it before, but prior to writing the 48 Laws of Power, I was not a successful person, I have to admit. I had at least 56 different jobs. My wife and I once counted, and we went back, and I think there's even more that I forgot. And I had so many bad bosses, so many people who were so political, so stupid, so incompetent, not all of them, of course, that I had all of this material, right? I had stored up all of these stories in my blood about these people who were so manipulative. And I had studied them, and I had the pain inside of me of having made these mistakes. So the book is a combination of my own kind of personal pain about the work world. It's not all bad, there were some great things too. My own personal pain and this deep level of research. So if I found a story from 3,000 years ago, from ancient China, that revealed something about one of the laws, and I saw something in the 1970s, I go, well, there's something very true, very real about it. There's something deep in human nature that confirms this particular law. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, you're almost like an anthropologist in a way, kind of going back through human nature over the decades.
Yeah.
Well, over the centuries. What about, do you think that those who are, maybe how they would be labeled today, narcissists or sociopaths or dark triad, are they the type of people that understand this undercurrent of humanity better than a normal person? A quote unquote, I don't even know what a normal person is. But do the darker aspects or avatars of human nature, do they understand these laws more than a normal person?
I made that comment earlier that some of that 5% may be people who are what you're talking about. I don't think all of them are. I don't think everybody who's really good at power and has a good feel for it has these dark qualities. It's a mix of things. But there's a very famous. There's a man who's quite well known on the internet about 15 years ago. I don't know where he is now. Named Sam Vakman. I don't know if you've heard of him. Sam Vakman admitted that he was an incredible narcissist, a very dangerous, dark narcissist who manipulated people terribly. And he came to a point where he saw this about himself. And he realized he can't control it. This is who I am. But I'm going to educate everybody about what narcissism is. And he's very brilliant, and his self-analysis is extremely accurate. But the thing is, he's very rare. So people who are like this, they don't think that they're narcissists. They don't think that they're evil. They don't think that what they're doing is manipulative, or they're even operating by laws. These are just things that come naturally to them. So, that makes it easier for them to do the things that they do, right? So, and so not all of us, I don't want to imply that in doing this book, you're going to turn into a narcissist. You're going to have these very dark qualities. It's just that you want to be aware of them. So these other people, they're not aware that they're behaving this way. I don't want you to crush your enemy totally. I want you to be aware that that happens in business all the time and not be naive with your company that you've, as an entrepreneur, this business that you created.
You want to read a book?
At this very moment, there are
I wanna read a
vultures circling around who are going to buy your business out and crush you because that's how business works, right? It's a merciless environment. I don't want you to be like that. I want you to be aware of it. I want you to be aware that there are people like that out there. That is sort of the point of the book.
One of the lines, I don't think it's a law per se, and I can't remember which one it was related to that I go back to often, is Sun Tzu's give them a golden bridge on which to retreat. And I can't tell you how many times I've used in deals and in business the opposite of what you just said, which is crush your opponent, which would be like a positive aspect from this book and Persuasion, which is actually, for your enemy, let them look like they have a win. And that's like a beautiful way to actually do the opposite of what you said. And I've gotten out of many a deal because of you, actually. I owe you some checks.
Really? Now, how are you applying that? I'm not quite sure I understand.
So, like, for instance, we had a deal that we wanted to close, and the guy had committed a little fraud. He had done a few things inside of the business.
On your side or the other side?
On the other side.
Yeah.
So we had done a transaction. They had said a bunch of things on paper were X and Y and Z. And then once we had dug in, we were like, ooh, that's not correct.
Yeah.
So whether it was, that they'd realized it or had written the numbers incorrectly, who could tell? And one side of us wanted to do, we wanted to go do a lawsuit. So one of my partners was like, well, if we have them, this is incorrect. We could own way more of the company. Let's go after them. But instead of doing that, we kind of said, ooh, we think there was a mess up in these numbers. And somebody wrote it incorrectly, and it's not a big deal. We can work around this. We've got to change the math a little bit on how much of the company we get. But, actually, I think we can just change this number. You guys can walk away. We can walk away. And so we gave them this kind of golden bridge on which to retreat. We could have sued them.
You mean you cut off the deal?
Yeah, we kept the company and kept some economics, but let them walk away without a lawsuit.
Uh-huh.
And that I don't...
You mean you were buying them out?
And I think a lot of your book, people talked about the manipulative nature of it, but I don't think that's always the case.
No, definitely not.
There's a lot of really beautiful aspects of the book that are so relevant to business.
Yeah. I mean, if you're alienating everybody, if you're crushing all of these people, if you're just having lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, there'll be a bounce back effect where you won't have many allies next time you're in trouble, right? Yeah. People will resent you. You'll have more enemies on the horizon. And when you slip up in this media crazy era, all those enemies will suddenly come out of the woodwork, and they'll be on social media, and the mobs will come after you, and you'll suffer for it. So there's an aspect of power where you have to play the soft game, where you have to please as many people as possible, make allies, make them think that they're doing what they want, but in fact they're doing what you want, which is the art of seduction itself. And so that's a huge part of the power game. It's not all about it's not a book about being aggressive and violent and pushing people around. It's the opposite. It's giving the impression that you're a nice, generous person, but that somehow you get people to kind of do what you want through being clever.
For young people today who maybe are not even going to be able to get through this whole book or Persuasion given attention spans, what do you think is the most underrated human truth that a young person should know who wants control or power?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, there's many aspects. You mean like a particular law of power, or
could be, or it could be something that sits with you that you're like, I want to talk about this more. I think young people should think about this more.
Well, okay. Well, what I would say is the most important skill that you can have in the work world, in the business world, and in life is knowing how to observe people and not be so wrapped up in yourself and be outer directed. So when you're in a situation like you've entered a job for the first time, your tendency is to be all insecure and think, did I say the wrong thing? Am I dressing correctly? Am I fitting in? And you're not observing, you're thinking about yourself, right? And the whole game is to be observing. It's like you're observing the bored with the different games that are going on, what people are doing, what they're like, their tastes are like, what the boss is like. There are all these levels of power going on. You want to get outside of yourself and simply observe, right? And not be thinking about yourself as much. And if you become a really good observer of people, which is something that I developed over all of these different jobs that I had. I wasn't necessarily the best person figuring out the game, but I was very observant about people and their nature and their flaws and such. If you become an astute observer of the people around you, you will have this, the game will be much easier to manage, right? You will know this is a person who's insecure. I cannot offend them. I cannot say the wrong thing to them. This is a person who's strong and secure. I want to be with them. I want them to mentor me. They can, you know, you want to be able to take criticism from other people. In other words, be less insecure and be more kind of outer motivated and paying attention to the people around you.
And so it sounds like sort of half the battle is sort of naming what other people are. So saying like, oh, this happened, Robert did this thing, which tells me he cares about how he's perceived. Perception and relevance is important to Robert, so I'm going to name a person like that. Right. And so often when you're young, you're just thinking, I, me. You don't even know to name another.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, the thing also that you want to understand is everything is a sign. So when you're observing, another thing is enjoy this aspect of it because it's actually a lot of fun.
Greetings.
It's like watching a movie and observing people and understanding them. But everything people do is a sign. So they're showing up late at meetings or they're not returning your phone calls. It's not some innocent event. It means something. It's coming from some place within them. They're telling you something about themselves indirectly. If their desk is a mess, right, they can't organize their desk, it's a sign of something else going on inside them, right? If they're not returning your phone calls, on and on and on. Every little thing that people do. Sometimes when I read an email, I can sense that there's a little bit of anger as an undertone. You can sense people's tone, not just in what they say, but in how they write something, right? There's not this usual kind of polite tone. There's a little bit of a sharpness. There's a word or two that indicates that they're upset, they're angry. Every little thing that people do is a sign. You're not paranoid because it's actually a lot of fun and you're decoding what's going on because people wear masks. They smile and they say, I love your ideas, Cody, you're brilliant, you're wonderful, but inside they're thinking something else. And you have to be able to pick up all of these signs.
It seems like a lot of us have lost a lot of that gut intuition. Like we're told to not trust your first instinct.
Yeah.
You know, we're told to not cross the street when we feel a certain way because that could be rude to somebody else. We're sort of continuously being told to mask this feeling we get in our gut. How do you reopen that again? Like if you're sitting in a room with a bunch of people in the workplace and you're trying to figure out how to play this game, what is the mental game Robert plays to sort of pick up these undercurrents that somebody might not be able to see?
Well, I wrote a book called The Laws of Human Nature, sort of my last book, and I have a very long chapter in there about nonverbal communication, and it's an extremely important skill to develop. And what that means is people can say anything they want to with words. In fact, they generally do. They never really exactly say what's on their mind. That's how it is in the social world. Because if you said what was exactly on your mind, you would be offending a lot of people, right? So we don't ever really say exactly what we feel. But our body language does not lie. It's very difficult to lie with your body language. Even the finest actors in the world find it very difficult to lie with their voice because the voice reveals people's feelings, right? So you want to be observant. We're very good at picking these kind of cues up. So you may not realize it, but you sense that something is wrong about this person that you've just met. This is something that I talk a lot about in The Art of Seduction. I've dealt with women who've written me back. They had a gut feeling that this man that they met was wrong. There was something bad about him. They got a bad feeling from it. But what happens is you don't trust that feeling. And then, because you're not, as you say in our culture, it's not something that we value. And then we go on, we have a relationship, and then we find the hard way out that our original gut instinct was the correct one. So you want to trust these feelings. They're very valuable. We are animals. We think we're all so intellectual. We've got our frontal cortex that governs everything. But inside we operate on emotions, on instincts, on feelings, on sensations. It's a nonverbal form of communication. It comes out in people's gestures and how they move, how they stand, right? They're at a party, you're talking to them, but their feet are pointing in a different direction. They're not so interested in you. Their eyes reveal if they're really listening to you or not. A real smile lights up the whole face. A fake smile's all kind of tight. That's wonderful. I really like, right?
Yeah.
On and on and on. It's this insane language. You can understand exactly what people are thinking. But you have to do this to be able to reach this kind of level of understanding. You have to shut off your own mind. You have to shut off all your internal chatter. You have to observe. And you have to see, exactly what, try to read and detect what that particular sign means. And you won't believe how often you're very accurate with it. You can detect people's resentment, people's envy. And as I said, I wrote a whole chapter about signs that you can look at tomorrow and learn about this language. It's just that you're not paying attention and you don't value this form because we're so verbal. We think everything has to do with words, but it doesn't.
Yeah. You've said seduction is a form of deception, but people want to be led astray.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well,
I wonder.
When you're a child, you were kind of really interested in stories, right? We still are interested in stories. But what you like about stories from a very early age is the fact that a writer is leading you in a certain direction, but you don't know where they're going, where they're taking you, right? And you want to be led, and they're creating an illusion and they're taking you along this journey, okay? And so they're seducing you through a story. And you can call it lies, you can call it fantasy, you can call it illusion. But reality is kind of harsh, it's kind of difficult. And we all want more pleasure in our life. That's why we go and see movies. That's why Hollywood is so successful. We want to be taken out of our day-to-day lives. We want to be led. We actually want to be deceived. We want illusion. We want fantasy. We want pleasure. And so you want to be the person that's supplying that fantasy, that's giving people that pleasure, because if you do, it gives you a lot of power, right?
Yeah, it's so true, and yet not said ever, which I feel like is a consistent thread through all of your books. It's where's the quiet part that we can say out loud that we shouldn't say out loud in every single segment of our life, which I love. And it also, another line of yours that I love is, when you meet a swordsman, draw your sword. Do not recite poetry to one who is not a poet.
Yeah, those aren't my words. That's somebody else's. But yeah, it's you've got to know the people that you're dealing with, right? And you have to understand, as you said, you're naming these people, which is the way you put it, which is a very good way of putting it. And some people are vultures. Some people you can't trust. Some people are tricky. And if you treat them as if they are somebody that you can trust, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, okay? So you have to understand who the people are that you're dealing with. What is their nature? Are they somebody that you can actually trust? And sometimes you think that you can trust them because you're not really paying attention. You're not paying attention to those gut things that we're talking about. So I think that comes from a chapter about know who you're dealing with and know exactly the kind of energy that you're getting from people, so that you're not dealing with a swordsman and reciting poetry, in which case you're going to get stabbed and killed.
Yeah.
So you have to know each person that you deal with.
You're really a student of history in so many ways, and human nature. In that vein, it seems like today more than ever, we value directness and transparency, and they're very direct and they're authentic, and authenticity wins. And this is sort of this narrative of today. Has that actually always been the narrative? Like, have humans always said we want to be authentic and real and wrecked? So this is kind of a new phenomenon, even though it might not be true.
Well, it's a pattern. So history goes in patterns. So I'm not going to bore you with too many history lessons, but in the 18th century, the theater was the main metaphor for being social. So you never wanted to be exactly yourself. You were playing a role when you entered in the social world, when you entered a cafe. You were playing a part. You were an actor in a play. You didn't want to reveal who you really were. It was the opposite. And then later there was a reaction against that in the early 19th century among the romantic movement. We have to be authentic. We can't wear these masks anymore. It goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth throughout history. So right now it's all about being authentic. In 10, 20 years, people are going to react against that, and they're going to be more into fantasy and role-playing and wearing those masks and having fun in the social environment. But I would say to this is nobody is ever authentic. It's a myth, it's bullshit, in fact, and it kind of is annoying. Because to be a human being is to be social and is to wear a mask, is to be an actor. As I said, nobody ever tells you exactly what they think. That person that you think is so authentic is actually creating the effect of authenticity. They know how to act like that, right? But they're not saying or doing exactly what's going on in their mind. So understand that we're all actors. And from a very early age, as children, we are learning to play a part, how to please people, how to make them like us, how to say the right things. So the person that seems to be authentic is actually playing that part of being authentic. Okay?
So if somebody called you authentic, would you like that? Is that a compliment?
Well, yeah, I think it's a compliment. I mean, there are degrees, don't get me wrong. There are people who are very fake in this world, and there's absolutely nothing authentic. So the person that we perceive as authentic, there's 40, 50% of them is actually true, is actually coming out. They're not faking it. But what I'm trying to say is they're not 100% authentic. There is always an element of playing it up, of laying it on a little bit thicker, of trying to look a little bit more authentic. I'm not saying it's completely fake, but there's an element of role-playing in it.
And I guess maybe it also is just like the play, as you mentioned, because if somebody's authentic, what you really say is you're playing your part very well. That appears to be who you are. You're a great actor.
Yeah.
And if somebody's fake, what you're really saying is you're not doing so great. I can see right through whatever mask this is. It's uninteresting, actually.
You put it very well.
That's fascinating. I've never thought about it that way. I
mean, there are politicians who we think are authentic. And I see them on television, and I go, God, no, they're not authentic at all. They're just really good at giving the appearance of being authentic. They know what they're doing. They've learned over the years by various successes and failures and trial and error that this is what gives the impression of being authentic.
Yeah, we were in a room at a political fundraiser for somebody that I actually think has done a good job as being a politician, but then he answered a question, which is, what was it? The question was, who is your biggest role model in the world? Who do you look up more to than anyone else? And his answer was, his mother, and this sort of story about his mother that just came off so scripted. It almost negated everything he had done prior, and the fact that I even liked his policies. And so the downward, or the downside of even a moment of pure bad acting or fakeness can be actually quite large. So if you don't know how to play, which kind of, there's another line, and I don't know if this is yours or from a quote, but the most ethical thing you can do is win, and to win you have to play the game better than the villains.
That's for me?
Yeah. This is from your Twitter. What do you think about this line? What do you think is meant by that? To win, you have to play the power game better than the villains.
Well, so I'm not sure because it's not exactly something I've ever written. But what I think the person who wrote that is trying to say,
Robert,
my
create the
social
fake.
media, I'm going to have to talk to you after this. what I think I'm trying to say is you out there are probably a little bit naive, as most of us are, like I was, right? And there are other people out there who aren't as ethical as you are. They play the game differently, right? They're not so concerned with the rules, they bend the rules, and you obey the rules, right? And they have the advantage over you because they're willing to do more than you're willing to do. You have to learn a little bit about their game. You have to play a little bit about what they're doing. You have to play a little bit of hardball back at them, and you have to do it better. Because what's wrong with a lot of villains is they're actually not as smart as you think. They're operating on emotion. They're pushing people around. They're powerful. They think they're so great. They're egotistical. They're grandiose. They think that they can't do no wrong. You need to be strategic in dealing with people who are manipulative. If you can be strategic, then you have the upper hand, right? Because I don't think a lot of times villains aren't as strategic as you think. I think that's what I meant.
And a lot of times it seems like we just act. We don't actually think about what our actions are. We speak. We don't think about what we speak. We're sort of this hit a knee, hit yourself on the knee, and you have
reflex,
this reflex action. And so if you're a type of person who overlays 10 or 20% of let me ponder my interpersonal communication more than the next person, you might win more often.
That's right, right. I mean, I look around me, and I think the main fault I see in reading the news and in dealing with people is they don't think long term. They're just reacting in the moment. And in the book, I wrote a book about strategy, my version of the art of war, called The 33 Strategies of War. And I call this tactical hell, as opposed to being strategic in life. Tactical hell is you're continually just reacting to what other people are doing. If you can lift your head out of the moment and think a few steps ahead and think, what is it that will actually bring me success? Not just immediately against this person, but 3 or 4 steps down the road. Elevate your mind above the battlefield and think ahead and game it out. And sometimes what you think is going to work immediately is actually the worst thing you can do. I'm taking a political example right now that's in the news, and it had to do with the recent possible shutdown of the government. And Chuck Schumer, as we all know, eventually folded, and he agreed not to shut it down, and he voted for the budget. And he said that the shutdown would have been the worst thing that could have happened. Okay? But in strategic thinking, which is something that I study very deeply, that was definitely the wrong move to make. It was reacting. It was being tactical and not being strategic. When you have leverage in a situation, in any situation in life, you have to use your leverage. And what a lot of people do, they're afraid of the leverage that they have. They're afraid they're going to offend the other person. They're afraid they're going to go too far, and they kind of compromise, and they don't use what they actually have. And what that signals is, you're weak, we can play you, and the next time around, we're going to negotiate the hell out of you. We're going to beat you, okay? You have to signal to people sometimes that you're going to use your leverage, that even if it means something bad is going to happen, like a shutdown, I'm signaling to you that I'm not weak, that the next time around you have to negotiate with me. That's long-term thinking. That's getting out of the immediate reaction and going, the bigger game is long-term, right? And there's going to be more and more situations where you're going to be conflicting. You want to signal to them that you're not a pushover, that you can resist them, that there's something else going on.
It's such a superpower, and it's so hard to do. I remember the first couple deals I did, I was scared. I didn't realize, you said it perfectly, which is you're scared of your own leverage. And I think it's also you're scared of people not liking you.
Yeah.
It feels like, especially today, likability is another thing we want. We want authenticity because we think that it will make people like us. And if we're not liked, we think that that is bad. Whereas, the guy on the other half of this book, Machiavelli, famously, he was the one that said it is better to be feared than loved, right? Do you think that's true?
It depends on your situation. The reason why Machiavelli wrote that is if people love you, love is a very ephemeral thing. So people can like you and love you, and that's great. But the next day, something happens and they don't like you as much, you don't do something that pleases them as much, and that love turns into something else. But if they fear you, that fear ain't going away. It's strong, it's stable, it's there. They can't change it because they know that if they cross the line, they're going to pay a price. You're going to hit them, whatever it is, right? So fear is much more stable. It's much more powerful. But you can go too far. If you're an employer of a company, and everybody's afraid of you, then they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to nuance everything that they say to you. So you're not going to know what's really happening in the world. Everyone's going to give you news that they think is what you want to hear. They're not going to tell you what you need to hear. They're not going to be as creative. They're not going to share their own ideas. So you can go too far with that, right? So for specific situations, I always tell people and clients that I consult with, you want to have the touch of fear. You want them to think that if they mess with you, they're going to pay a price, that they can't push you around. That's not the only thing they feel about you. They do like you, but there's a little undercurrent of, I respect that person, and if I don't do certain things, I'm going to pay a price for that.
Interesting. So in practice, would that be something like, I remember reading Netflix's sort of their manifesto on how to run a business. And they kind of famously wrote this PowerPoint about it and shared it. And they basically had a zero policy, which is like they tried to have almost no rules at Netflix. And they were like, we trust you guys to be employees. You can take as much time off as you want to. You can spend whatever you want. No hotel minimums, no plane costs. If you think you need first or first class, take it. And so that was their policy. But the way that they enforced it was interesting because they said, do whatever you want as long as it's in the best interest of Netflix. Yeah. And so how I think they enforced it would be like exclamation points of fear. So they basically would say, well, this person spent a bunch of money on themselves and, didn't go to meetings that they said that they went to. That was thus not in the best interest of Netflix. And then they would sort of publicly fire this person and talk about it and say, this is why this person was fired. So is that an example of how to be, yes, we can be generally loved from having this wonderful open policy, but upon, somebody doing something wrong, exclamation point of fear is this person was fired and we will do a public showing of it.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. I've seen that in sports. Vince Lombardi, who was a great coach of the Green Bay Packers back in the 60s, probably one of the greatest football coaches ever. He had a policy of treating everybody equally. There were no stars on the team, even though there were players who were better than others. Everybody got the same equal treatment, which made the people who weren't making as much money feel very good, and it sort of created a team spirit. But if one person stepped out of that, if one person did something that showed that they weren't being part of the team, right, that they had an ego, he would punish them really hard. He set an example. And so what you want is you want a cohesive team. You want a group of people around you who are all working on the same page. But if you spoil them, if you let them do whatever they want, then they will do whatever they want. But if ever occasionally you set an example, you punish someone, you show that there are limits to what they can do. It's a very, very effective means of management, of controlling people, of giving them leeway, because you want people to be creative. You want people to enjoy their work. It's something that I practice as well with people who work for me. Occasionally, I want you to know that there are limits. You cross them, I will get really upset with you, right? But generally, I try to be very nice. But that occasional use of the whip is much more effective than if you're whipping people all of the time, or if you have no whip at all in your hand.
Yeah, kind of like Pavlov's dog. At some point, you just keep shocking them consistently. They just lay down.
Yeah.
Interesting. So right now you're writing a new book.
Yes.
What are you obsessing on currently? Like, what is in that mind of yours today?
Well, I'm finishing a chapter. It's a book about the sublime, which is, I had a stroke and I had a near-death experience. I came very close to dying. Somebody basically saved my life. My wife did. And I maintain that kind of experience changes how you look at life. The things that you took for granted, you no longer take for granted. And so when I look at the world, when I'm being alive, just being alive as I am right now, it's actually a very strange feeling to be alive because I came very close to death. And it made me realize that despite all of the horrible things that are going on in the world, it's actually incredibly insane that we humans are at this moment in history, that in the course of 30,000 years, we went from being, whatever we were, to having all this incredible power. We are these insane animals. This consciousness that we have is this unbelievable gift. We have these brains that are by far the most complex organisms in the universe. Scientists have demonstrated that. But we're not aware of any of these things. We take it all for granted. And it's a book that's trying to open your eyes up to all of the sublime aspects of just being alive, of the history of the cosmos, of ancient history, of what it was like when we were children, of how our brains are formed, about our relationships with animals who have consciousness, that we can interact with other species, with love and how sublime love can be, with history, with death itself. And so it's a book that's kind of making me feel better about all of my limitations, but I want the readers to go away and think differently about what it means to be alive, to transform them. And so the chapter that I'm writing now, that I'm going into just now, is about willpower and energy, and how we have capabilities that we don't even tap into, that we're only using a small part of our brain, that we're only using a tenth of the energy that we actually have, right? It's our minds that are holding us back, and that we're gifted with these powers that are not being used. And I have examples of humans who've been in situations that are incredibly stressful, incredibly difficult, and they overcame them. They were able to tap into those powers because they were facing death, essentially. They were facing something very terrible, and a kind of courage came to them. So there's like a story of a plane crash in the Andes, and in the worst part of the Andes, in the mountains in the middle of winter, and these boys who were on a rugby team, they somehow managed, in the course of 3 months, to save their lives. More than half of them died. But how they did it, the guy who narrates the story, is so incredible that anybody who, afterwards, when people said, it's absolutely impossible what you did. You climbed these 18,000-foot mountains that even mountain climbers can't climb, and you did it without any equipment. He called it a miracle. And so we have these powers that we're not even aware of, and circumstances will force them upon us. So if you're facing stress, if you're facing difficulty, you will feel this other energy that flows through you. It's very human, it's very powerful. So that's what I'm writing about now. That's what I'm kind of fascinated about.
Interesting. It's actually funny because I was thinking about, what does somebody like you, who's such a prolific writer, who's written these books that...
Well, I'm not very prolific, actually. I take 4 or 5 years to write a book.
Well, that's true.
I wish I were prolific.
You are instead a very profound writer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll meet you on that one. So you're a very profound writer. You write these deep works. I imagine there are moments where you feel uninspired.
Oh, God. Tell me about it.
And you need to dive in. Is there something that you do when you are feeling absolutely no way you can write?
Well, it's almost a question that makes me want to cry. I'm so sorry, but before I had my stroke, I wrote 7 books, and I would get those moments, and what I would do was I had to get out of my mind, and I would go take a hike up into the park, and all these great ideas would come to me. Or I would go for a long swim because I was into long-distance swimming, and then I'd come out of the pool, and wow, my mind was just sparkling with ideas. I can't do any of it now. I can't hike, I can't swim, I can't do the things that got me out of my mind and my body. And I'm writing a book that has to be exciting, that has to excite the reader every single page, every word. I can't write a dull book about the sublime. So what I do is I have to work on my head. And so I'm sitting there writing this thing and it's not coming out right. I have to step back and I have to put myself in the mood and I have to go, this is an incredible privilege you have, Robert, to write this book. Let's get into the spirit of it. Let's feel what you're trying to write. Let's not be intellectual. Let's not write something. Let's feel it first and then write it. I have to go through a process. I have to listen to some music. I have to look at my cat who's walking by. I have to talk to just look at my wife or see something. And then I feel it and then I can write it. But it is difficult because all of those things that I depended on I don't have. So just like I said, when life turns against you, you have to adapt, you have to learn. It brings the best out of you sometimes because we're normally in a rut. Things are so familiar, we don't work on ourselves. But when things turn bad, like they turn bad for me, you have to change, you have to adapt, you have to become a different person. And it makes you grow and it makes you learn, which is what I've had to do. I have to force myself to be inspired, literally.
Wow. And in a completely new way. It's hard enough.
Yeah.
Even to do it the way that you've done it for decades. But to find a completely new way is fascinating. Yeah, and I guess the universe kind of keeps pushing you to become the next level of the game player.
Well, the sublime is a concept that I've kind of created. But there are books, my way of thinking about it, there are books that are out there about the concept, but they're so dry, they're so intellectual, they're so like academic speak, all this jargon, that they're so unsublime, right?
Very true.
I want this book for people to read and really feel it and feel like there's an experience of it they can have. And I'll tell you one thing, buddy. When I first thought of writing the book, which was 16, 17 years ago, before I had my experience, I was going to go across the Gobi Desert. I was going to go to Tierra del Fuego in Antarctica. I was going to see all the sublime parts of the planet. I was going to swim with dolphins. And I was going to experience this all and write about it. And here I am when I finally get the chance to write the book. I can't do any of those things. But the book will be better for that. That's what life is about. I call it amor fati. The things that happen to you are the best things that could ever happen to you. So having my stroke made the book better because I can't do those things. But 99% of my readers won't be able to do them. I'm showing you how you can look at life sitting in your office, sitting in your chair, having your breakfast, and you can have these experiences in your day-to-day life. You don't have to do things that are extraordinary.
Yeah.
Because life is extraordinary.
God, that's so beautiful. Yeah, it reminds me, do you like Bukowski at all?
Very much.
Me too. I mean,
I love
psychopath,
Charles Bukowski.
but I love that about him. You don't think so, a little bit?
No, he was a wonderful guy. He's a local LA people. I know people who knew him.
Oh, that really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to be such a nerd about it. His like the poem that he did on becoming a writer, was that what it was? And it's how he talks about, well, actually, I have a quote in here from him, I think. Yeah, I remember when I was writing my book, but then when I write the stuff that I only write for me, do you ever do that? Where you just write things that nobody will ever see?
Yeah, and hopefully nobody will ever see.
That too. But I loved that part where he's like, if it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything, don't do it. Unless it comes unasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. And how he talks about the libraries of the world have yawned with books such as yours. I always loved that because it's basically him anti-selling the entire time.
How so?
He's saying, don't write. Like, don't write. We don't need another book that has no purpose except for your ego.
Yeah,
like, only write if it comes bursting out of you, if it would kill you to not put pen to paper.
Right.
Which it sounds like this is that book for you. You're like, you feel like you have to write it.
Well, I guess I'm maybe slightly neurotic in that, or a hypochondriac. I always think that I am going to die, like some illness, or that I'm going to have an accident and the book will never get finished. And so I tell my wife, if I'm dead, this is how I want to finish it. I'm that, I know these aren't great things about me.
Have you always been like that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So this book I have to finish. I can't let myself die before I finish it because it means that much to me, you know? And so sometimes I'm a little bit of a daredevil in that I used to, my hiking and swimming and mountain biking, I would do things that were a little bit risky because I like that. And so now I have, this is so silly, I don't even know I'm going into it, but I have a special bike that I can use because I can't ride a normal bike. It's my only outlet in life is this recumbent bike. And I go whipping down these hills, past cars and everything. And it's like, I don't want to do this today, Robert, because you might get crushed by a car and then your book is finished. But then I force myself to do it anyway. But this is a book that I have to get out. And I'm on chapter 11 and there are 12 chapters.
Wow.
So I just have to live another 9 months and I'll be okay.
I'd like a little bit longer, but I like this.
I
Does
would
your
do-
wife laugh when you say that?
Yeah, she knows. She's been putting up with it a long time. Yeah.
For a long time.
But she,
You know,
yeah.
It's funny because you also have a line that's like, never whine, never complain, never try to justify yourself. And
Yeah.
it seems like you live that a bit too. What does that mean? Why do you tell people to never whine, never complain, never
'Cause it's so
justify yourself?
senseless. There's nothing to complain about. Everything happens for a purpose. Yeah, in the moment when somebody does something irritating, my first instinct is to complain and even whine a little bit. But then I calm down and I go, it's not important. It doesn't matter. You don't need to complain about this. In fact, there's something good about it. So this morning, to give you an example, I'm meditating, right? I meditate every morning. That helps me a lot. And there's noise going on that's kind of interrupting my thoughts. And I'm going, God damn it, I want to yell at that person. And I'm meditating. How can you have a thought like that when you're meditating? And then it makes me go, no, Robert, it's just a noise. Just think of it as birds singing. Calm down. Don't be upset. It's actually training you to not get upset. So the bad things that happen to you are training you to not take them so seriously or to find a way to use them. Nothing is ever really bad. People often ask me in these interviews, if you were 20 years old and you knew what was going to happen to your life, would you go back and tell yourself something and do something differently than the way you did it? You know, or do you have any regrets, Robert? I have no regrets. I wouldn't change anything because everything happened for a purpose. Everything lined itself up for a reason, and it all came out the way it should have come out because I embraced it and I found a way to learn something from it. So even when I had a bad job, my attitude was, I'm going to learn about people. I'm going to learn about what I hate and what I love. There's no wasted time in life.
It's such a good point. I saw this meme the other day that reminds me of your bird song. I don't know if you've seen it. It was
You saw what?
a meme, you know, like a little graphic. And in it, it was this woman in her window and she's looking outside and birds are singing. And she's like, the bird song, it's so beautiful, right? And then it was the two birds, and it was one bird yelling at the other bird, I've eaten all your children, I'll be back next year for the next round. And
That's pretty good.
it made me kind of chuckle because the perspective from the woman was, this is lovely. I have learned to associate birdsong with something magical, and the birds are simultaneously murdering each other, and that's their language. And so it kind of takes me to that idea of nothing is good or bad except really by comparison.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've lived that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I had to think of one thing that's wrong about humans or about us, is that we think too much. We overanalyze everything, and in overanalyzing and thinking too much, we ruin things. We ruin what could be good, what could be pleasurable, what's normal. So if we think, we're inevitably going to find something negative to uncover about that. So, you know, we think and we create things that are good or bad or whatever, but they're just things that happen. They're not good or bad. They just are events that happen. And we think of them and we make them what we want to make them.
Yeah. You know, this is something in your book, Seduction, but kind of a theme throughout them. You had this idea of anti-seductive, which I had never thought of this before. What is somebody who is anti-seductive like?
Well, I hope you're not one of them. No, I don't think so.
Depends to who, I bet.
Well, you know how some people are good seducers.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be not just for sex, it could be socially or politically. They're very calm. They know how to tell a good story. They have charisma, they have energy. Their face lights up. They know how to say the right things. And they attract you.
Mm.
Okay? But there are people who do the opposite. They say the wrong things, they do the wrong things, they dress the wrong way, they take you to the wrong places, they repel you. They're anti-seductive. Nobody wants to be around them, right? And so what are the qualities that make a person anti-seductive? So one of them are people who talk too much, who are always bragging, who always have a story to tell. You know, in the realm of seduction, women often complain of men who explain. They explain everything. They explain exactly what you're doing, what you mean, right? They call it mansplaining, okay? So people who tell you everything, who are doing 95% of the talking, and they don't think they are, they're extremely anti-seductive. People who moralize, who tell you you're wrong, this is what you need to do, this is what's good, this is what's bad, that's anti-seductive, right? They preach to you. People who are always bragging about themselves, that they're so great, that's a very anti-seductive quality. I think being vulgar is an anti-seductive quality because it's like you have no self-control. You don't look at yourself and realize what you're saying or how you're dressing or how you're looking is actually kind of off-putting, right? So a seductive person is self-aware. They're self-aware of their body language, of you know, the clothes that they wear, of how they talk. The anti-seductive person has no self-awareness. They enter life, they don't look in a mirror, they don't think about what they're saying. They just think they're being natural, and they offend a lot of people.
Yeah, I've definitely met all those types and been all of those types at varying points as well.
No,
I try not to. Well, I think, you know, I think as you get older, like a little bit, you start to realize, oh, you know, that story isn't so necessary to share so broadly. Like being so loud isn't so necessary all the time.
Right.
You know, just the other day we were talking about how even being too familiar can be in some ways anti-seductive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you go back, you talked about before, which is this little bit of, there's almost like some sort of slight, what would you call that?
A little bit of air of mystery.
Yeah.
So, I know I was talking to a celebrity, I won't mention names, who was saying, Robert, you talk in seduction about mystery, but in the era of social media, you have to be out there all of the time, right? You talk in the 48 Laws of Power of creating distance and absence, using absence to create respect and honor, which is one of the laws. How do you do that in the era of social media? You always have to be out there. You have to be familiar. And I say, if you do too much of that, I'm not going to use her name, people will be so familiar with you that you're going to lose that aura of being a celebrity. They're going to take you for granted. And you might shine for a year with being out there and having all of your posts and doing all of these things. But after a year, they'll find somebody new who they haven't seen before, and you're not so new anymore, and they'll find them and they'll leave you, and it'll be very painful for you. You have to keep people on their heels. They can't know everything about you. And what I said is, disappear for a couple weeks. Make people talk about you. Make people wonder, why is she not posting as much? Why are we not seeing what she's wearing in the morning and having for breakfast and all these other things? I said, Beyonce did that. She disappeared for like a couple of years, and then she comes out with like a country western album that nobody expected. Michael Jackson did that. He would disappear between albums for 3 or 4 years, and it just made people go crazy and talk about him and wonder who he was. That was before the era of social media, I grant, but you have to disappear sometimes so people don't take you for granted. If they know everything about you, it's human nature that you become too familiar and they're not interested in you anymore at a certain point. So you have to create mystery.
Man. Do you think you have to do that in interpersonal relationships too? How does one create mystery, let's say, in a relationship?
Well, it's that you think of doing something that's going to surprise the other person.
Mm.
Now, nobody knows you completely. Your husband doesn't know every single thing about you, Cody. He didn't know you before you got married. He didn't know all your previous boyfriends and everything, and some of the naughty things that you've done.
Saint, Robert. No, no former boyfriends. Perfect saint. Over here.
Right. Like I believe that. So he doesn't know these things. He doesn't know you completely. So if you give him a sense of, I'm sorry, what's his name?
Chris.
Chris, you show him something that he didn't know about before. He goes, wow, I didn't know Cody. I was taking her for granted. I wasn't, I think I knew everything about her. She showed me something that surprised me. Maybe the surprise isn't something good, but at least it keeps him on his heels. It makes him think about you. Because in a relationship, people will take you for granted after a couple of months, right? They were so interested in you in the beginning, and now it's kind of dwindling. They take you for granted because they think they know everything about you. If you surprise them, if you say something different, if you take them to a place where they never thought that you would take them to, if you dress a certain way that seems a little bit out of character, not completely out of character, they go, wow. You need to do that in a relationship constantly. Otherwise, it's just going to fizzle. All the energy is going to go out of it.
That's so beautiful. It really feels to me, what I'm reminded speaking to you and every time I read your books is it is this beautiful game. Whether it's a play that we all are playing, and if you do it in the right way, that is somehow how you want to play the game too, you can have outsized outcomes without that much additional effort.
That's right.
Which is a beautiful thing. I cannot wait to read your next book. When is it out yet?
I can't wait to have you read it, because that means it'll be finished.
I bet. Just
it'll be
careful
out.
on your bike rides.
Huh?
Said careful on your bike rides. We need you to stick around, check in 9 months. Make sure you're still
I'm
around.
going to go on one tomorrow, but I will be careful.
Okay.
It will be out, Lord blessing me, it will be out in fall of 2026. So amazing. Next year, fall.
Wow. Okay. Well, we don't know the name or anything yet. That'll come out next year.
It's called right now The Law of the Sublime.
I like it. Robert Greene, this was so amazing. I love learning from you. I'm actually going to go back and reread a couple of your books because I've realized how much I've forgotten in them. But thank you for bringing these ideas into the world.
Thank you so much for having me, Cody. I really enjoyed it. It was a great conversation.
Me too, minus the drilling. We have to go murder somebody out back. I don't know
what that was.
I know. I was pretending I couldn't hear it. Yeah, exactly. Small screams. Robert Greene. Where do you like to point people these days? Obviously, I'll do your intro and everything to get it right in that part.
I have a website that goes back hundreds of years. I believe it's the same address.
You have a great Instagram and Twitter too. Do you prefer people go to
this is a place where
everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Power, Seduction, and war.com.
Okay,
my first 3 books, and there you'll find my Instagram, my X, Twitter, whatever you call it, YouTube, TikTok.
Are you
the
dancing?
Whole shebang. Huh?
Are you doing TikTok dances?
No, but I have close to 2 million followers on TikTok just doing videos of, just like our conversation.
They're really good, by the way. Do you know that you probably already know this, but you are one of the highest ranking guests for YouTube podcasts of anyone? Do you know that? Across almost all channels, like Stephen Bartlett, Chris Williamson.
Yeah, I know Stephen Bartlett. I don't know why.
It's good information.
But I'm very grateful for it because
it's helpful.
I love the world of podcasting. I can tell you, I know we're finished here, but before podcasting, a writer had to go on mainstream media. Man, that sucks so much. I hated that.
3 minutes, and you don't get to say anything interesting.
Yeah, that's speaking of inauthentic. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, I agree.
I love podcasting. I love podcasters. I love that world. You just get to be yourself. There are people who actually read your books.
Yeah.
And it's like a real interaction. So
then they
I'm
feel
very
like they
grateful
know you.
for all that.
So the last part, this podcast, the idea is, what would you say to the young Robert listening out there, but you, if you could go back, what would be your words of wisdom? And then whatever you feel comfortable writing, and then we have you just read a message to young Robert. And it's sort of a reminder that even those on high you know, at some point they were young and lost and all the things
Yeah.
we all were.
Okay. So what I wrote was, listen, young Robert, everything was going to turn out fine for you. So stop worrying and feeling so depressed and enjoy your youth more because it goes by way too quickly. You'll have plenty more to worry about when you're older and things start falling apart, so try to enjoy yourself much more right now.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Robert.
That makes sense?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
And I think that's true.
Yeah.
Even on your worst day when you're young, it's kind of your best day, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wish we.
I mean, it's good being older. I don't regret that. It has its own advantages. I don't take things so seriously. But man, I had so much more fun when I was younger, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you did say too. God, what a bummer that would be. You said it more eloquently, but what a bummer that would be if everything worked out right on the first attempt.
Yeah.
I think that's
you
true.
have to learn, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Robert, this was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Cody.
طبعا عشان احنا مشغولين بس في المليونيات عندنا وبنعتبر المليونيات دي اكتر حاجه. في مليونيه عالميه هناك، بس هقرا لحضراتكم حاجه بسيطه بس. يعني النهارده مثلا تعالوا نشوف في اوروبا ان هو بيعتبروا ان بكره نهايه العالم او هتحدث نهايه العالم. المانيا على الحدود بين المانيا وفرنسا، مخبأ شوننبورغ شمال شرق فرنسا على الحدود بين فرنسا والمانيا، هيفتحوا المخبأ اللي عايز. إريك هالتر من اتحاد أصدقاء خط مارينو الذي يضم عدد كبير من التحصينات والمخابئ على الحدود الفرنسية مع ألمانيا وبلجيكا ولوكسمبورغ وإيطاليا. المخابئ دي في خط مارينو كانت معمولة أيام الحرب العالمية وعلى الحدود ما بين ألمانيا بلجيكا لوكسمبورغ إيطاليا. برضو فاتحين الكلام ده كله. اصدقاء هذا المخبأ الموجود تحت الارض، يعني كل اللي عاملين مخابئ دول عاملين دلوقتي فرصه وبيعملوا لهم زيارات والحاجات دي كله. صحيفه الجارديان قالت ان الشعب الروسي خائف من تحقق نبوه شعب المايا القائله ان يوم القيامه سيكون 21 ديسمبر. الصحيفه قالت الشعب الروسي في جميع ارجاء الدوله مشغول لاكثر من شهر في شراء الشموع والحاجات دي كله. المايا دي قبائل هنديه اسست حضاره مدنيه بلغت اوج تالقها في القرن الثالث الميلادي. شعب المايا يسكن في أجزاء كبيرة من منطقة أمريكا الوسطى التي تعرف حاليا بغواتيمالا. ده كل الموضوع ده كله. عشان كده معانا الدكتورة مايا صبحي عشان تحدثنا في هذا الموضوع وفي حرب وفي الطاقة ثم حرب الفضاء. مساء الخير يا دكتورة.
مساء الخير.
نبتدي. أنا طبعا كالعادة أنا لما بيحصل حاجة بره الواحد ما بياخدهاش على علتها. فكرة إن إحنا نشوف أفلام كثيرة جدا في الخيال العلمي ماسكه في موضوع واحد. فكره انهم يتكلموا دائما ان الكارثه تاتي للارض من الفضاء. هم بيعتبروها الفكره هم هل دي ترويج لحاجه ولا هي سبوبه رزق ولا هي ايه الموضوع؟
انا هقول لحضرتك حاجه. هو الموضوع دوت يعني انا عايزه اتكلم فيه النهارده باسلوب احاول ان انا ابسطه. ليه؟ لان يعني اولا نقول بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اول حاجه، ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا رسول الله عليه الصلاه والسلام. يعني أنا عايزة أقول حاجة في الأول. أنا عارفة كويس جدا، يعني كلمة للسادة المشاهدين، عارفة كويس جدا إن صعب قوي لما حد يبقى داخل في حاجة مثلا بال20 سنة وداخل فيها جواها وإزاي هم بيفكروا، إزاي بيخططوا، إزاي بيدبروا.
تكلمي عن نفسك يعني.
وإني أجي مثلا في حلقة أحاول أبسطها مثلا للناس ممكن غالبيتهم ما عندهاش فكرة عن الموضوع. ف يعني أنا أرجو النهارده، لأن النهارده موضوعنا عايزين ندخل في موضوع كبير قوي. أرجو النهارده إن يعني هو مش هتقضي يعني بأي صورة من الصور، يعني الحلقة يا دوب تقضي إن يتاخد فكرة عامة. إن شاء الله بإذن الله، لو قدر ربنا إن أنا أكون مع حضرتك تاني نفتح كل الحاجات بقى بالتفصيل وبالشرح.
نركز على حتة صغيرة ونشرحها كويس.
فعشان كده يعني أنا ليه بقول المقدمة دي؟ لأن في حاجات هتبقى غريبة جدا على الناس، فعايزة الناس أطلب منهم حاجة في الأول. إن الموضوع اللي هتكلم فيه ده أنا قعدت فيه سنين كتير جدا، مش بس عشان النواحي العلمية والتحليل العلمي والإثباتات والتسريبات والكلام ده. هو أهم حاجة فيه فلترة الزيف من الحقيقة، لأن المواضيع دي فيها خدع كتير جدا.
It starts as a whisper, a small, seemingly harmless comment, a glance that lingers a little too long, a smile with something lurking beneath it. At first, it is easy to dismiss, to brush off as a momentary lapse, a triviality not worth reacting to. But then, it happens again, this time louder, sharper, more public, and now the realization sets in. It is no longer a fleeting moment. It is a pattern, an act of disrespect that has been ignored and allowed to grow. This is where the problem begins, the moment when silence is mistaken for weakness. And it is a mistake that most people make, ignoring disrespect when it first appears, thinking it is insignificant, hoping it will disappear on its own. But this is not a harmless oversight. Disrespect, when left unchecked, is not just a small act. It becomes a signal that says, this is someone who can be ignored, belittled, or taken advantage of. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. In a world obsessed with power, status, and control, He knew that respect is not something you simply earn. It is something you enforce, something you protect. And the moment someone disrespects you, your reaction, your next move, will define not only how they see you, but how everyone else in the room sees you as well. You see, disrespect is rarely personal at first. It is not a direct attack, it is a test. A calculated attempt to see how far they can push you, how much they can get away with. And when you fail to react, when you allow that disrespect to slide, you are teaching them that it is okay to do it again. The problem is not the disrespect itself. It is that by ignoring it, you have opened the door for more. The first sign of disrespect is a test. And if you fail, you do not just lose respect, you become a target. So, what do you do when this happens? When someone disrespects you, do this not later, not after you have thought about it, but immediately. You do not get angry. You do not raise your voice. You go silent, not passive silence, but strategic silence. You withdraw. You stop feeding into the energy they are trying to create. You refuse to engage, to explain, to laugh it off, or to make them feel comfortable about their actions. Instead, you make them feel your absence. You make them feel the pause in the rhythm of the conversation, the sudden shift in the energy of the room. Because disrespect only thrives when it gets feedback, laughter, defensiveness, appeasement. But when it is met with cold stillness, when it is met with a refusal to engage, it collapses. It becomes exposed for what it really is, a cheap, desperate grab for power. Machiavelli never struck first. He watched. He waited. He allowed his enemies to reveal themselves fully before ever responding. And when he did respond, it was never with apology, it was with precision. You do not need to explain how you feel or why you are upset. You do not need to give them a piece of your mind. Instead, you mirror the violation. But not with insult, not with retaliation. You mirror it with a question. You ask, did you mean to say it that way? You tilt your head slightly, hold eye contact, and calmly ask, are you sure you want to repeat that? Or maybe, that sounded personal, want to clarify before I respond. Each question is an incision, not an attack, but a way to expose the violation for what it is. It is an invitation for them to double down, to repeat the disrespect, to make their aggression public. Because here's the thing, most people who disrespect you are not bold. They are opportunistic. They test boundaries to see who will check them. And when you meet their move with cold silence and surgical precision, they begin to doubt their position. They begin to wonder if they can push you further. And that doubt, that uncertainty is what you want. Not revenge, not drama, just doubt. Because the person who causes doubt in others, who makes people hesitate, stutter, or correct themselves around them, does not need to demand respect. They radiate it. And the moment you have made someone second-guess their actions, the moment they realize that you are someone who cannot be disrespected without consequences, that is when the game shifts. And when the game shifts, the room shifts with it. People start to take notice. People start to recalibrate. They speak more carefully around you. They choose their words more wisely. And your name, the way they speak, your name changes. It becomes something said with more calculation, less ease. This is where your power begins to grow. And it does not come from being the loudest in the room. It comes from being the one whose energy is no longer predictable, the one whose silence speaks louder than any words ever could. When someone disrespects you, the natural impulse might be to defend yourself, to stand up for what is right, to react emotionally. But in that moment, reacting emotionally is exactly what they want. They want to see if they can trigger your insecurity, make you flinch, make you react. But what if, instead of doing what they expect, you did the opposite? What if, instead of rising to the occasion, you withdrew completely? Machiavelli understood that the person who reacts emotionally loses power, loses status, while the person who withdraws strategically becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability creates fear. This is the core of Machiavellian law when it comes to handling disrespect. It is not about proving a point, not about showing them you are right. It is about showing them you are not available for the energy they are trying to create. The first thing you do when someone disrespects you is to withdraw. You do not smile. You do not laugh it off. You do not defend yourself or try to explain how their words or actions made you feel. You make them feel your absence. You do not meet their energy. You do not give them the satisfaction of a reaction. You do not engage with their disrespect in any way. What you do instead is withdraw your energy. You pull it back. You remove yourself from the situation mentally, emotionally, and physically. You stop feeding into the cycle, and in doing so, you reveal to them exactly what they have just done. You show them that their disrespect is not something that can be brushed aside. You make it clear that their actions have consequences. Not through anger, not through retaliation, but through the power of your absence. In that silence, you make them feel what they were trying to avoid. The discomfort of their own disrespect hanging in the air, unacknowledged, untouched, and ignored. When someone disrespects you and you do not react, they are left questioning everything. They start to doubt themselves. They start to question their own motives. And that doubt is what you want. Because doubt, uncertainty, and confusion are the greatest weapons in the battle for respect. When you make people hesitate, when you make them second-guess their behavior, you hold the power, you control the narrative, and you have done so without raising your voice or becoming emotional. But this is not just about withdrawing your energy for the moment. It is about creating a shift in the way people see you. It is about ensuring that the next time someone tries to disrespect you, they will think twice. They will hesitate. They will wonder if you will respond the same way. And that hesitation, that uncertainty, is what builds your power. Machiavelli did not respond impulsively. He did not react to every slight. He watched, he waited, and when he made his move, it was with precision. You do not have to be loud to command respect. You just have to be unpredictable. You just have to make people unsure of where they stand with you. And in that uncertainty, you will find your strength. Once you have withdrawn, once you have left your presence felt in the silence, the next step is to expose the violation. Most people who disrespect you want to get a reaction. They want to see if they can push your buttons, trigger an emotional response. They want to rattle you, to see if they can break your composure. But here's the thing, what they do not expect is for you to mirror their disrespect, not with anger, not with insults, but with calm precision. When they cross the line, you do not yell, you do not make a scene. Instead, you ask a simple question. You do not attack them, you do not escalate the situation. Instead, you create a moment of pause, a moment of clarity. You look them in the eye, tilt your head slightly and ask, "Did you mean to say that?" Or, "Are you sure you want to repeat that?" Or, "That sounded personal. Want to clarify before I respond." Each of these questions is a surgical incision. It is not about denying what they have done. It is about giving them a chance to expose themselves further. Because the truth is, most people who disrespect you are not bold. They are opportunistic. They are testing the waters to see if they can get away with it. And when you meet them with silence and a question, it forces them to confront their own disrespect. The beauty of this tactic lies in its simplicity. By asking a question, you are not denying the attack. You are inviting them to double down on it, to make their disrespect public. You are not defending yourself. You are putting the ball in their court and letting them decide whether they want to escalate or back down. And in that moment, you have gained control. You have shifted the dynamic. They are no longer in the position of power. They are exposed. Most people won't take the bait. They will back down. They will get uncomfortable. They will realize that they have overstepped, and that doubt will creep in. And doubt is what you want. Because when someone doubts themselves, they become less likely to try again. They begin to question their own actions, their own motives, and that is when your power grows. This is not about making them feel bad. It is about making them feel unsure of themselves, unsure of their position. And that uncertainty is what drives respect. When someone is not sure if they can push you, when they do not know if you will react, they become cautious. And in that caution, you hold the power. But the true mastery of this technique lies not just in asking the question, but in the way you ask it. It is not about being aggressive. It is not about making them feel small. It is about being calm, collected, and precise. Your tone is everything. It is not a challenge. It is an invitation. You are not accusing them. You are giving them an opportunity to expose themselves. And in doing so, you have set the stage for your next move. After you have withdrawn and exposed the disrespect, it is time to shift the entire dynamic. This moment, the way you handle it, has the power to change how people see you, not just in this instance, but moving forward. You have established your boundaries, but now you must ensure they remain intact. The key is to never return to the status quo. Once someone disrespects you, things can never go back to how they were before. The relationship, whether personal or professional, must be reframed. You do not have to announce that things have changed. You do not need to make a big scene or an official declaration. What you do instead is shift how you show up. Your presence changes, your energy shifts, and the way you interact with that person becomes different. You do not need to explain why or justify it to anyone. You simply stop making yourself available in the same way. You are no longer as warm, as accessible, as accommodating as you once were. This is crucial. Machiavelli understood that public punishment, when justified and well-timed, not only ends the immediate threat, but also serves to educate everyone else in the room. If the disrespect happened in front of others, let your new posture speak louder than any words could. People are watching, and they will notice when you stop tolerating certain behaviors. This is your opportunity to reframe the entire relationship, to show others that you are not someone who can be disrespected without consequence. The shift does not need to be dramatic or confrontational. It is not about getting loud or making an emotional statement. It is about withdrawing your warmth, sharpening your language, and refusing invitations from that person. You stop engaging in the same way. You make it clear that the line has been redrawn. And while you do not have to make an announcement about it, everyone around you will feel the change. When you withdraw your warmth, it does more than just protect you. It sends a clear message to others. You do not have to demand respect. You just show people that you are someone whose boundaries are not to be violated. And that is the power of reframing the relationship. You do not let anyone slide by thinking they can return to the previous dynamic. You shift the energy, and you do so without apology. This is what separates the respected from the ignored. It is not about dominance through intimidation. It is about presence through principle. You have shown everyone in the room that you won't tolerate disrespect. You do not need to raise your voice to make this clear. The shift in your posture, your tone, and your energy does all the work for you. And once you have made that shift, once the line has been drawn, you never go back. You do not return to normal. You maintain your stance, and you make sure others know that they cannot cross the boundary again. The first time someone disrespects you, it is a test. How you respond in that moment sets the tone. But here's the thing. The true power of your response does not lie in that first encounter. It lies in your consistency. People will test you again. They will see if you meant it, if you will soften, if you will let the boundary slip. This is where most people falter. They handle the first violation well, but when things go back to normal, they let their guard down, and the cycle repeats. Consistency is key to ensuring that the respect you have demanded stays in place. When someone crosses the line and you withdraw your energy, you have created a new dynamic. But that new dynamic only holds if you maintain it. If you allow them back in, if you go back to the way things were, you have undone all the work you have done to establish your boundaries. And that is why consistency is so powerful. If the first time you set a boundary, the person backs off, that is good. But if they sense any weakness, any inconsistency, they will test you again. And when they do, you have to be just as firm, just as cold, just as clear. You do not let them off the hook. You do not soften the lines you have drawn. But this time, your response must be disproportionate to the offense. This is Machiavelli's wisdom at play. Punishment, when it is equal to the offense, is forgettable. But when the punishment is greater than the offense, it becomes unforgettable. This is the moment when you reinforce your boundaries with greater intensity. Not out of anger, not out of ego, but because you understand the power of consistency and disproportionate consequence. The person who crosses the line a second time must feel the shift even more deeply. If they made the mistake publicly, you do not just retreat again. You respond publicly, but strategically. You do not need to insult them, but you do need to send a clear message. If they try to engage with you, you respond with coldness. If they seek your warmth, you remove it completely. You do not escalate with words or aggression. Instead, you use surgical rejection. You deny them the access they once had. When they try to reclaim your warmth, You give them the social equivalent of a closed door. You respond with politeness, but you make it clear that they no longer have your attention. You do not need to explain yourself, and you do not need to justify your actions. The message is simple. You have lost access to me, and that is your consequence. This is the power of discipline and distance. It is not about proving you are stronger or more dominant. It is about demonstrating that you do not tolerate disrespect. And this is not something you need to say. It is something you show through your actions, your energy, and your presence. By consistently maintaining your boundaries, you make it clear to everyone that disrespect comes at a high cost. You do not need to demand respect. You simply create a space where others understand that crossing your line is not worth the price. Once you have enforced your boundaries, once you have set the tone and shown everyone what happens when they cross that line, the final step is one of the most powerful moves you can make, mercy. But it is not the mercy you might think. This is not about letting people off the hook or forgiving them with warmth. No, this is the kind of mercy that chills to the core. When someone realizes they have crossed the line, when they realize their disrespect has cost them, that is when they may come back to apologize or overcompensate. They will try to laugh it off, act like nothing happened, or attempt to smooth things over. But you do not react. You do not smile. You do not comfort. And you certainly do not let them back into your favor easily. Instead, you remain unchanged. This is where you have ultimate control. Mercy, when delivered without warmth, carries a chilling message. You are no longer a threat to me. You have stripped them of their access to you. And now, when they come back, they will realize that they can no longer have the same connection. You do not have to say it. You just have to remain the same, unmoved. This kind of mercy is not about letting them off the hook. It is about showing them that you do not need them to be okay, and you do not need their approval. You are no longer reliant on their validation, and in doing so, you place the power back in your hands. By not giving them the comfort of forgiveness or the warmth they once had, you remind them that their actions have consequences. What happens next is crucial. They will test the waters again, perhaps subtly, perhaps even without realizing it. They will try to return to the previous dynamic, pretending nothing happened, seeing if they can break through the barrier you have placed. And this is where you make your final move. You do not lash out. You do not argue. You do not even raise your voice. You simply remain unchanged. Your posture is different now. Your energy has shifted. And they will know that you have made your boundary clear, not through noise, but through presence. Your silence will be louder than any apology or overcompensation. And it is in that silence, in that absence of warmth, where the true power lies. When you have gone through this cycle, when you have enforced your boundaries, exposed their violation, and responded with cold precision, the game is over. The disrespect they once tried to test you with has been absorbed into the environment, leading them to realize that they have no access to your energy anymore. And that, more than any words, is the ultimate punishment. But it is not about cruelty. It is about control. You have shown them that you are someone who cannot be crossed without consequence. And in that moment, they understand that the respect you demand is not negotiable. It is something that stands unyielding. By now, your boundaries are set, your actions have made an indelible mark, and your presence has recalibrated the entire social dynamic. You have withdrawn, you have exposed the disrespect, and you have refused to allow anyone to cross your line without feeling the weight of that violation. But this is just the beginning of your transformation. The final step is not about winning the battle. It is about shifting the very perception of who you are. Once you have successfully enforced your boundaries and created a social space where disrespect has consequences, you have become someone who operates outside the normal rules of engagement. You no longer respond in ways that others can predict. Your presence does not need to be loud or assertive. It is felt in your silence, in your measured responses, and in your complete refusal to tolerate anything less than respect. What happens now is something truly profound. Your absence becomes a message. Your silence becomes the ultimate tool of power. People begin to realize that when you are present, it is a privilege, not a given. They start to recognize that your attention, your energy, your presence are all things to be earned. And in doing so, you transform the entire power dynamic. You do not need to fight for respect anymore. You have already shown that you can walk away, that you can disappear without any effort, and that in your absence, people feel something they did not expect: unease, discomfort, and the quiet understanding that you are someone whose time, energy, and attention are valuable beyond measure. It is not about fear. It is about the knowledge that you are not easily accessible. And once people understand that, once they realize that disrespect is something that does not just go unnoticed, but is met with a shift that changes the atmosphere around you, they begin to recalibrate their behavior. No longer do they feel free to mock, belittle, or take you for granted. They hesitate before even the smallest slight. And it is in that hesitation where your power is fully realized. You have become someone who is not afraid to let things go, who is not desperate for validation, who does not need to fight every battle. Your very presence becomes the standard by which all others are measured. People begin to speak of you differently. They no longer joke around in your direction, and they begin to take your words, your actions, and your silence with the utmost seriousness. The game has changed. It is no longer about responding in the moment. It is about making sure that your name is associated with someone who cannot be disrespected. And once this shift takes place, you will notice that people start to speak of you in a different tone, one that carries a certain
Anduin versus Jaina.
You asked for it.
The light shall bring victory.
One of the most interesting things to me about this particular topic with regards to the Jews and the myth that they control this and they control that. Banking, they control finance, they control government, they control politics, they control media, they blah, 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 blah. They control everything. The most interesting thing to me about it isn't that people have come up with this. Because we know already that the West has been saying this kind of thing. And we know obviously where this kind of thing leads, where it has led in the West time and time and time again. Hitler wasn't a one-off. You should understand that. The Nazis weren't a one-off. This wasn't a dear Lord, how could this ever have happened? It happened repeatedly. This isn't, this is part of the game that they play about themselves, that the lie that they tell about themselves, that Hitler was some kind of an anomaly. Hitler was not an anomaly in any way, shape, or form. In Western history, in European history. No, he's absolutely a son of Europe.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Now looking at what is happening in Gaza, many have asked themselves, why are we not having immediate response against Israel? Because we are looking at how Israeli forces are handling children in Gaza, disabled people, women, and vulnerable old people. They are not being treated well, and some of them are starving to death. Yet, Israel continued bombarding them. Israel continues to really show that these people do not deserve living. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu is even proposing hostage or even takeover of Gaza and having total control of it. This is unwelcomed. Why is no one responding positively towards the cries and the plight of people in Gaza? In today's video, we are going to talk about the perceptions and the myths that people have had about the Jews and how they control systems, governance systems, banking systems, and many other systems in the world. In this video, Shahid Bolsen is going to explain the deep intricacies that tie Jews and the lies that many people have believed over how these people control the world. Take a listen to this, then we shall talk in the end.
And not a bastard. He's an absolute, he's the heir apparent of Europe. As you can see now, they haven't stopped. They never gave up with this. You know, you're supporting Ukraine now with their Nazi flags, with their Nazi calls, their Heil Hitler, and you've got it in America, in the country that supposedly defeated the Nazis. You're full of neo-Nazis. You got your president doing the Nazi salute. So this is not an anomaly, and you're not fooling anybody. We know exactly this is a very consistent thing with you. So it's not strange to me that they came up with this. But the most interesting thing to me about it is how passionately people believe it, how passionately they defend it, how deeply invested they are in believing it and maintaining it. And when you tell them facts and data that demolish this myth, it's like you took away their security blanket. They're like a child, you know, you took away their favorite toy. That they, you know, it's like you not letting them suck their thumb anymore. They get so upset, they're just like, they go immediately to violence, they go immediately to viciousness, they go immediately to insult and slander, and like it's a personal attack on them to tell them that the Jews don't control the world. You are very invested in the idea that the Jews are the most powerful nation on earth. It's very strange, and you should understand that if this is a fact-based opinion that you have, and you're on solid ground, you will never react that way. You will never react so emotionally, so histrionically, to being introduced to facts and data that debunk what you're saying. Your reaction is never going to be like this. Your outrage doesn't refute the facts and the data and the reality. Your outrage convicts you in the falsehood of your belief. It's a very emotional, personal response from people who, for whatever, this is how you know this isn't rational, it's not reasonable, it's not logical. It's very, very deeply personal for people to believe that the Jews are the ones. And I think that you have to look at different types of people who believe this, who choose to believe this, in spite of actual logic, sense, rationality, reason, and factual reality. People who choose to believe this, to try to understand what is, frankly, psychologically, intellectually, emotionally wrong with you, that is causing you to be, that is causing this belief to be some kind of medication for you. This is some kind of a medication that you're taking that is enabling you to face the world by believing this. That's why you react so vehemently, so violently when this false belief gets challenged. It's like I've insulted your mother when I say that the Jews don't run the world. Question yourself. Why do you feel that way? Why do you take it so personally? I mean, are you a Jew? Are you Jewish? A Jew who has been raised to believe that they control the world, and I want to tell you that you don't. You take it very personally. The truth is, you're not invested in believing that the Jews control everything. You're invested in believing that the Jews are the only evil people, and that you are not evil, despite all of the evidence that we have, despite all of the historical evidence that we have, the endless litany of atrocities that you and your people have committed in the West, the Europeans have committed. You don't want to take responsibility for any of that. You want us to believe just the perfect example is with this Epstein business. You make it sound like these senators and these congressmen and these business people and these investors and these, professionals and these elites, you want to make it sound like they're victims. You want to make it sound like they're victims for committing sexual assault on children on an island. They were tricked into it. Could you be tricked into it? Could you be coerced? Could you be tricked into it? And the crime is that it was on video. That's the crime. You know, it's the epitome of why you do this, because you're the one who went to the island. You're the one who's the pedophile. You're the one who assaulted a child. You want the Jew to be to blame for what you just did. This is in microcosm. Everything that is the epitome of the history of the Western relationship with the Jews. I posted a picture of the signatures on the Constitution of the United States. I said this is the original Epstein list, because the 13 colonies were the original Epstein Island. That was the original Epstein Island, but maybe that doesn't count for you because the victims on that Epstein Island were all African slaves. You know, Thomas Jefferson, everyone knows Thomas Jefferson had a relationship that they romanticized with his slave. Did you know she was 14? He was in his 40s. She was 13 or 14 years old, maybe younger. This is your Thomas Jefferson. This is your founding father. And like father, like son. You trying to act like this is some, again, like the same way you try to act like Hitler was an anomaly, you try to act like every time some evil comes, whether it's an anomaly or they got tricked into it, well, come on, who are you trying to fool? I mean, in fact, it even goes all the way back to the origin of calling the Jews Christ killers.
Yes.
The Romans did that. That was the Romans. The Jews weren't in charge. But you put that off on the Jews too. Now again, and then the reaction is, Shahid, why are you defending the Jews? Who said I'm defending the Jews? I didn't say that they don't do evil. I'm just saying they're not the only ones who do evil, and they're not the tough ones. They don't have the most power, but you're trying to deflect from the ones who have the most power, who have the worst criminal record in history.
Thank you.
You know, just because I say that the Jews are an accomplice and not the crime boss, that doesn't mean I'm defending the Jews. The Jews were under us.
Yeah.
The entirety of our history. The entirety. They were under us in Medina, and they were under us ever since.
Yes.
They never ran us. They never put us in a problem that we couldn't handle. They knew their place, and we handled it. So we know. See, you can't fool us. This is what I'm saying. You can't fool us. We know the history. We know what they're capable of and what they're not capable of. And we know that if you're righteous, they can't do anything to you. They can't get you into this or that compromising position. You did that yourself. It's not their fault that you're a pervert. It's not their fault that you dehumanize other human beings. It's not their fault that you can't control your lusts. It's not their fault, that you are what you are. They didn't make you pirates. They didn't make you rapists. They didn't make you pillagers and plunderers and colonizers. They didn't make you do that. You were that, and they participated in the profit making.
Yeah.
Because why wouldn't they? They don't have a higher level of morality than you do. Kufar's kufar. The Western so-called civilization. You're evil. This is in your character. Evil is in your character because of your culture. Don't misunderstand. And I've clarified this many times. This isn't racial. That's not even a thing. It's not genetics. This is your cultural background. This is what you inherited over time, over hundreds, if not thousands of years. This is how you became. We could overlook it. We could pardon it if it was a slip.
Right.
It's not a slip. This is absolutely a feature. It's not a bug. I mean, don't you? This is the question. Don't you want to know?
Wow.
How the system works? Don't you want to actually know how the system works? And the problem is that you have made an assumption about how the system works, and that assumption satisfies you for reasons other than your interest in the truth. It satisfies you for some kind of psychological reason, for some kind of emotional reason, for some kind of personal reason. And that's why you have an emotional reaction when it is disproven. Because if you have a theory, say, about who's in charge, and your only motive, your only driver is that you genuinely want to know what the truth is, then when someone comes to you with information that causes you to change your hypothesis, you welcome that, because all you want to do is be right. All you want to do is be truthful. You want to be accurate. You know, you won't react like you've been personally attacked.
Not at all.
Except that, like I said, this is your security blanket.
By not wanting to know the truth, it plays perfectly
Precisely. I mean, this has been one of the most useful things for the OCGFC. And this is one of the reasons why they developed where they developed, which is in America. This is where they developed. No, excuse me. Obviously, there's a whole history of private sector power. You can and the blending of private sector power with government, like the East India Company, the British East India Company, the Dutch, and so on. But the unique elements of the current modern version of OCGFC developed in America, and the American system was perfect for them because of the illusion of democracy already has everyone looking the wrong direction for where power is. It already has, you already live in a system that is literally sustained by deception and lying to the public. It's literally sustained by that. This isn't hyperbole. I'm not just trying to talk rhetoric here. I mean, functionally, logistically, the power structure in America operates by sustained lies and deception and misdirection. So this provided a perfect situation for the rise of the OCGFC, because everyone is always looking over there for what power is and where power is and who power is. So that allows the OCGFC to operate in the shadows. Although it's not in the shadows, it's just not where you're looking. There's plenty of light, but you're just not looking there because they've got you looking over here. And so yeah, this is one of the reasons why people who maybe I'll sort of offer an olive branch to the people who are clinging to the idea of the Jews. The system is opaque. The system is complex. The system is hard to understand, it's complicated, it's confusing. And people want to be able to operate in the world with some kind of an understanding. People don't want to operate in the world like they're just blinded. You come up with ways to make it make sense to you. But you're not capable of basing that hypothesis on researched reality. So you follow your intuition, say, which ends up just being following your own biases. So when you disprove that theory, it shatters their whole, what they have built that enables them to even move around and function in the world in a way that makes the world make sense. So on one level, that's why you have this very emotional, personal reaction. But either way, I mean, grow up. This is how it is. If you can't actually operate in the world on the basis of truth, on the basis of reality, on the basis of facts, then withdraw from public discourse. You know, and I've said it a million times. You don't have to engage in politics. You don't have to have an opinion. You don't have to be involved. This is not required of you. This isn't something that has anything to do with the Jews. It has to do with, like I said, this isn't something that has anything to do with the Jews. It has to do with, like I said, it's your own culture. It's your own belief system. It's your own history that shows what your culture and your belief system is, which is that morality has never mattered to you. Suffering has bar on you proceeding with any agenda, any action.
It doesn't matter to you.
Yeah. Why didn't they stop slavery 400 years earlier? You know, why did they do everything that they've done? Why didn't they stop the genocide of the Native Americans? Because they got something out of it, and they're getting something out of this.
Not because there was
You have to,
imperative.
yeah, you have to understand. Morality is not a driver in policy. Power acquisition, power consolidation is. Profit maximization is. This is what drives policy. Because this is the system that you made, and this is the other thing I want to clarify. The system didn't make you like this. You made the system like this because you're like this. This is why I said you can be actually capitalist in our last one. You can be capitalist and not materialistic, but you can't do that in the West because you're already materialistic. So your approach to business is according to the way you already are. The system that you built was built according to your own parameters of your own character.
What will America become if it will stop being a global power?
A regional power.
Yeah.
It already is functionally a regional power. It just hasn't quite completely accepted that fact yet.
Yeah.
Or there are factions inside of America who haven't completely accepted the fact that they are, at this point, a regional power. And I've talked about this before anyway, but their status as a global hegemon was never achieved by merit. It was never achieved through competition. This is against their historical narrative. But America didn't become a global hegemon by defeating everyone else. Everyone else who was a hegemon fell apart. and America was just the last man standing, not because they defeated everyone else, but everyone else got tired. Everyone else collapsed from their own weight, and that's the same thing that's happening to America. But by all rights, America's supposed to just be a regional power. And that's what they will recede into being. What they believe in is power. What they believe in is exploitation. What they believe in is material acquisition, period. Full stop. Everything else are rationales that they use to achieve that. Everything else, every other so-called belief that they pretend to have is just for that purpose. It's just some kind of a rationale for that purpose. To appeal to give them some kind of a justification that has some relationship to depth of principle or depth of ideals. Whether we're talking about positive ideals or negative ideals, you know, whether you're talking about neo-Nazis or you're talking about woke or what have you. They don't believe any of that. None of them believe any of that. Their belief in the marrow of their bones is power consolidation and material acquisition of resources. They're not deeper than that. That's as deep as they go. Everything else is just decorating that very core primitive reality. Here's an example. There's a recent thing going on that you probably are aware of if you speak English and if you consume any media at all. There's this American Eagle ad campaign for their jeans with this Sydney Sweeney, right? And there's this huge controversy because the ad is seen as a dog whistle for eugenics and white supremacy.
Right.
Okay? The company, American Eagle, does not care about any of that. But they know that you people will argue about it. They know that you will start talking about it. They know that there's people out there who use eugenics, who use white supremacy as their rationale for the way that they decide to act in the world, for the inhuman way that they decide to act in the world. And then there's the ones who are on the other side who use this particular rationale for the way that they operate in the world. When both of them are operating in the world the same way, and the one who is getting them to argue is operating in the world the same way by using beliefs and ideals and morals and principles and what have you, just as a way to make money. This is all that's about. Their stock went up like $400 million off of the back of those ads. Mission accomplished. That's all they care about. If you think that American Eagle is trying to push eugenics and white supremacy, you're crazy. They're trying to push their stock price up. That's all they're trying to do. Financialization. They're trying to make money. And they're making fools of you. And the same thing is true of whenever you see any Westerner on the right or the left arguing about anything. They're just trying to make fools of you by making you think that they believe anything that they're saying. They don't believe any of this. They believe in power consolidation and acquisition of material resources. Full stop. That's it. That's as far as they go. That's as deep as they go. And they will use any and all rhetoric, any and all ideologies in service to that, and to decorate that and to make it look prettier than it is. So I'm saying they don't care. You know. This is how much contempt they have for belief in anything. This is how nihilistic they are. That white supremacy is a horrifically inhuman, dangerous, violent ideology. But that's fine. We can trigger that because there's money in there. There's money to be made. So that's fine.
Free advertising by way of arguments.
Because for sure, if we put that out there, there's going to be a whole cohort of people who will recognize the eugenics aspect in the wordplay about what's her name has good genes and whatnot.
Right.
So obviously, we'll be able to start a controversy. We'll be able to I mean, who even remembered that that's a company that exists? Now everybody knows it. You know, and they got hundreds of billions of dollars in free advertising, in free name dropping, all across the media, all across social media, free marketing. and their stock went up. Mission accomplished. This is how cynical they are about morals and so on. You have to get up to speed. We really have, we as a people, and I'm not even just talking about the Muslims. The Muslims, we all have to get up to speed, brothers and sisters. We have to get up to speed because things are moving very fast. And if we're moving into the future, if we're moving into the second half of the 21st century, and we're still kicking around ideas like, oh, the Jews control this, the Jews control that, the Illuminati, the Masons, and what have you, and you still haven't understood the basics of power dynamics, you're going to get left behind. We're going to get left behind because things are moving very fast. And what we should be talking about is what's coming next. But we spend so much time just trying to get ourselves up to speed about what is now that we can't even start talking about what's coming next because we have a lot of challenges upcoming. How this transition is going to play out and what we need to do on our side, what our leaders need to do, what our private sector leaders and our governmental leaders and our rulers and our populations, what we need to do to try to manage this transition in a way that is beneficial for us. Because the OCGFC are predators. I've said it 1,000 times. The OCGFC are predators. They're never going to stop being predators. They're never going to stop being the way they are because, again, the system didn't make them. They are this way, and that's why the system is the way it is, because they are this way. That's why they are. That's what their character is. That's what their culture is. Their instinct and their driver is always going to be to dominate and exploit and dehumanize and take and pillage. That's always their go-to reflex, their go-to instinct. And we're moving in this transition where all of those powers, all of the powers of the A National OCGFC, their centers of power, the center of gravity of the global economy is moving from the West into our part of the world. It's moving into the global, and I'm sorry to say it, but we're very far behind in our understanding. And we must get up to speed and put these kinds of really ridiculous, absurd, unserious topics and discussions and paradigms behind us, because this has no place among any refined and sophisticated and serious and intelligent people who want to have a role in trying to shape the future for not just for the Ummah, but for the whole world. Because the way that the whole world is going to go is going to depend upon how this transition is managed.
What a great commentary by Shahid Bolsen. He has always spoken his mind, he has always spoken without fear, and he knows how to really handle these issues that affect the world and the globe as it is. When it comes to global geopolitics, he is a go-to person because looking at how he gives his snippets of ideas, you'd be amazed to a greater extent by how he has grasped a lot of issues that are currently affecting the world in many, many different ways. In the video, Shahid Bolsen delivers a sharp critique of Western conspiracy theories, particularly the anti-Semitic trope that Jews control global banking, finance, media, and politics. He argues that this belief is not only factually baseless, but also serves as a psychological crutch for those seeking simple explanations for complex global power dynamics. Bolsen asserts that the narrative distracts from identifying the true centers of power, which he refers to as the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, OCGFC, a nebulous group of national elites who operate beyond ethnic or religious affiliations. He emphasizes that scapegoating Jews is intellectually lazy and plays into the hands of those who benefit from this misdirection. Bolsen further explores how the West uses such myths to obscure its own historical and ongoing crimes, including those tied to the global financial systems and geopolitical strategies. He connects this to crucial pathologies in the West, referencing figures like Jeffrey Epstein to highlight how elite networks, not ethnic groups, perpetuate systemic corruption. By framing issues in moral terms, he argues the West avoids accountability for its actions, as these narratives are irrelevant to the amoral operations of global power structures. Bolsen insists that the focus on Jewish conspiracies is a deliberate diversion that prevents people from understanding the structural mechanism of control widened by the OCGFC. He calls for a more mature and disciplined approach to political analysis, particularly more Muslims, urging them to move beyond childish myths and grasp the real dynamics of 21st century power. Bolsen stresses that the OCGFC thrives in the shadows of public misdirection, simplistic scapegoating to maintain its dominance. He warns that failing to identify the correct enemy, global financial elites, rather than ethnic or religious groups, hinders effective resistance against systemic tyranny. This point is underscored by his demand for intellectual clarity and responsibility in political thought. Overall, Bolsen's commentary is a provocative call to action, challenging viewers to abandon emotionally satisfying but misleading narratives and focus on the intricate, often hidden structures of the global power. He frames his argument as a demand for intellectual rigor, not a defense of any group, and emphasizes the need for collective purpose and strategic thinking to confront the true forces shaping the world. So if you look at how Shahid Bolsen speaks in this video, it really ties to the question as to why is no one responding to the challenges that people are really having in Gaza. Why do I say so? If you look at the myth that most people have always peddled around, we have always been told that Israel cannot be confronted because most Jews are the ones who are controlling the financial systems of the world. They're the ones who control the global geopolitics, and therefore there is nothing that can be done to them. They are untouchable. But according to Bolsen, he thinks this is a lie and it is a fallacy by most political analysts. He has positioned himself as somebody who is ready to really explain the deep intricacies of how global political strategies have always hid themselves behind such narratives as to how Israel and Jews control the global politics and the global power. Share your thoughts down in the comment section, and if you're watching us for the first time, please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share. Thank you, and let's meet on the next one.
Come on, share! Hunt them down!
Job's done.
For a master tactician, this is nothing. Listen closely
to your fear.
Hunt them down! Too soon! You will awaken me too soon, Executus!
Job's done.
So hot!
Listen closely.
Job's done.
shelters us.
Our betrayers will suffer endless torment. I am beyond imagination. Succumb to madness. Untouchable! None may challenge the living flame. I must choose. Time is running out. I bleed for Cthulhu.
My people will